and welcome to the next episode of Joe Martin Show. Today I'm here with Gibran from Get a Grip, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Gibran. I'm a promoter here in South Texas. My booking collective is called Get a Grip Booking.
So how did you get the name Get a Grip? Where did that come from?
So honestly, when I was just spitballing names about ideas for originally what I was going to do for a zine, still in the works by the way, but when I was just kind of spitballing names, I didn't want to just take a name like Valley Texas Hardcore because I was already trademarked by my friends that I met when I first got introduced into the scene like many years ago.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of spitballing names and I just wrote a list down, and I don't know, Get a Grip just kind of stuck out to me because I've always heard like some bands use those in the lyrics, and I don't know, it just kind of stuck out to me. And then when I ended up getting into booking like years later, I just said, F it, I'll just go and take that name and just run with it, and it's been the name ever since. Not really much of a backstory, but it was just a name that I thought of.
And what is it, since it's evolved throughout the years, what does that name mean to you now?
Great question. So basically, now that I've been booking shows for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, this year, I would say that Get a Grip has evolved into something that I do thoroughly enjoy. I never thought I'd actually be able to kind of contribute more to this community that has given so much to me since I've been around in 2013 all the way up to now. So it's been cool. You know, I can't thank, words cannot express how much I can like say thank you for like all the support I've gotten, like from starting that by myself before I even like put the name on it, put a name on it and go from there.
And so what was your history? Because you mentioned you've been part of the scene since like what, 2013. How did you like even enter? Like how did all that begin?
Right. So for me, it goes back to like when I was little. So growing up, I was always introduced to music early on as a child. So my mom had like a small collection of CDs from her youth and from her like young adult life. So I'd always be listening to stuff that was mainly like the hot artists like in the 90s and the early 2000s. So anything from Shakira to Ricky Martin to Paulino Rubio, Alejandro Guzman, you name it. You know, if it was like something on the radio, I listened to it.
Yeah.
And if there was on the CDs, I listened to that. And then it would just kind of spitball from there. And I was always just either tapping or humming to things that I would listen to as a kid. So I'd always be interested in music. I just never really understood it at that point. And then, you know, just being brushed with culture with like watching movies and like playing video games and just, you know, growing up with like what I was able to have my hands on at the time. So my first brush with like heavy music was like watching the Batman Beyond movie and hearing, I actually ended up finding this out like years later that it's called Mephisto Odyssey. That's the one of the artists that's like more of an industrial, more like new metal sounding band that ended up making like a song for that soundtrack.
Yeah.
When the music video is basically just like very like, oh, Blade-esque. Like you see like, you know, people just wearing like leather or like all black, and the person that's like being the vocalist has like their hair in spikes like bat ears.
Yeah.
So
did you ever watch Ace Ventura?
I did years later, but I never understood the Cannibal Corpse until like way later on. But it always in the back of my mind.
It's always interesting how that shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah, so that was interesting, like kind of finding it out years later. But yeah, just going back to that. So Batman Beyond was a huge rush for me, and then I ended up having my first horror movies bought for me, Freddy vs. Jason. The soundtrack from that.
There's a lot of rock in that one. Yeah.
Yep. Hatebreed, El Nino, you name it. And I just didn't understand it at the time, but I was like, oh, this movie is like cool to me. And then like just hearing the soundtrack from like the opening credits to the closing credits, and then when they actually fight, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really bad.
And then just kind of just, you know, spitball from there, and I was just like getting into all that. It wasn't until that I got into middle school and high school, I started seeing people wear band shirts, and I'm like, oh, what is Suicide Silence? What is Asking Alexandria? And I would just, you know, think about that, and then when I had the courage to actually ask those people what they were, like, oh, they're these types of bands, blah, 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 you should get into them. And, you know, that's when I started developing my tastes. I've always been into everything.
Did they mention you like, oh, you buy shirts at a Hot Topic, or like what kind of stores were popular at that time where they were buying all these band shirts?
Mostly Hot Topic, yeah.
Yeah, because like I know like the big thing right now is like vintage stores, But I guess during that time it was like with Hot Topic and this is the one Spencer's, right?
Spencer's, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Hot Topic was like more like on the weird side of like, oh, you are the alternative like demographic. Yeah, people would be buying shirts at Hot Topic all the time, or be like mall goths or mall rats, whatever you want to spin it. Very funny term, but
It's kind of weird how like things go from like the outskirts or like the outcasts and it becomes into mainstream. Like that was probably like one of the stores where like before like, oh, like what are you doing there?
exactly.
Same thing with like even like right now, like for me it's kind of weird seeing like kids grow up with anime where I guess when I was in middle school and like high school, like it was kind of like you're considered like a weirdo for watching anime, and then like now like everybody's watching it, like it's part of main culture now. Like it's not something looked down upon.
Yeah, for sure. So anime was also a huge one too. I did forget to mention that. So I would watch Tsunami as a kid, and I'm sure some people had similar experiences to that too. So I would watch, Dragon Ball, original Dragon Ball, and then Dragon Ball Z, and then stuff like Inuyasha and Cowboy Bebop. Those are my brushes with culture too. With
And then
like
they had like a lot of J Rock in the soundtrack.
correct. Yeah. And I remember Death Note being on Toonami at some point, but my memory's so blurred with how many
Same.
shows were being aired in Toonami at the time that I can't remember. But
Then
Cowboy Bebop was a big
like
one.
it was like kind of canceled, then brought back, canceled, brought back. So I'm like I lost track of all that stuff.
No, most def, but yeah. So J Rock was also thrown in the mix there now that I think about it. So yeah, anime was a huge one for me too, to kind of catapult me into the branching out later on, like once I was able to have access to the internet, and then being able to watch like anime MVAs where they would just like splice like music onto
A lot
like
of
specific things.
Evanescence, and Might Become, and a bunch of other songs like that.
Yep, Linkin Park was a big one too.
Yeah, Linkin Park, great stuff.
hmm
I'm surprised. Like well, in some ways it's kind of come back on TikTok, but like now it's called like edits.
Yeah,
And it's still the same thing where you're getting clips from videos, movies, and all that stuff, and then adding like other music into it. It's cool. I don't know. It's weird.
no, it's definitely like a blast from the past type shit if you think about it. But yeah, so just like all that kind of just melded into like molding into that like
The musical influence.
shift for me. Like once I got to middle school, and then once I started getting access to the internet and getting my first phone, like and before my first year of high school, I just downloaded iHeartRadio because someone told me that that's where you can find music, and just accessing YouTube when I could was a big major key point too. So I was just like, okay, I saw the shirts, let me look those up. Okay, cool. I don't understand it, but this sounds cool to me. And then I found bands like Slipknot, Korn, Black Dahlia Murder, Bullet from a Valentine, Pierce Savelle, Chimera, you name it. Just anything that I could find, I listened to it.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff didn't really resonate with me until like way later on because, again, young mind doesn't understand the culture impact of some of these bands. Like some of these did pioneer a specific genre. Some of these were just like big names. But how was I supposed to know if I couldn't even figure that out at the time? But I just liked what I like.
And what was drawing you to like these kind of songs during that time? Like, what do you think like it resonated with you?
So I would say since I was listening to a lot of stuff on the radio and I was hanging out with like a bunch of people that I'm no longer friends with, I was just kind of tired of the mainstream stuff because they would overplay songs, whether it be Drake, Lil Wayne, or whatever.
Yeah, because R&B and rap was very popular. That's what I'm saying. Like, whenever it came to like people who grew up with rock and continued down that path, it's usually like parents who kind of like start off that journey. Because I noticed with the younger people, like when it comes to rap, they usually like took their musical influences from cousins or like younger siblings, as opposed to like older adults that kind of like influenced that rock spear to it. So I always find that interesting.
No, most definitely. For me, I was just like always listening to whatever was available. I didn't necessarily grow up with like liking rock music or heavy music right from the go.
So it's just whatever.
Just whatever was available. And then when I started developing my taste and be like, hey, this is something I like more than anything. So I just figured I'd just run with it. And then after that, I was a part of sports too in middle school. So
What sports?
I tried everything from football to basketball, track.
Which was your favorite one?
Had to be track because I was always a huge proponent in playing outside as a kid. So I'd always be running around for hours. So that just kind of just stuck with me.
How good were you at that?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I just wish I had kept up on my grades, but student athlete, it's either you are good with your grades but you don't play a lot, or you play a lot but you're not good with your grades.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
so that's how it always goes. But yeah, just like having like one person play Linkin Park like at a basketball practice, I'm like, oh, who's that? Linkin Park. Okay, don't know who that is. Cool. Looked it up later. I'm like, okay, cool. Just checked out Meteor. Can never pronounce it for the life of me. The first Linkin Park LP.
Oh yeah.
I was like listening to it, I was like, whoa, what is this? And then just kind of went from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then just iHeartRadio would just recommend me artists, and I'd fall asleep to some music when I had my phone, and then I just wake up and I'd be just like searching the search history and go from there. And yeah.
And how did that lead to like you finding the music scene from like listening to all this music and then actually finding the scene? Because to me, that's probably like the most difficult part when it comes to like getting involved is just finding the scene. Because most people, even now, like it's kind of its own little bubble here in the valley, and so like you kind of have to know someone from the inside to like drag you in. It's kind of hard to accidentally find it.
Right. So back in when I found this community, basically I had to have, again, like you said, had to have somebody that already knew about this to kind of just like entice me and be like, hey, so there's shows that happen here. Because the first thing I ever attended concert wise was with my mom like years ago, seeing Daddy Yankee when he played Convention Center a long time ago. That was back in 07, 08. Can't remember for the life of me.
Yeah.
But that was my first ever concert. And then when I started getting into this music and started, kind of like branching out and finding what I liked the most, I ended up going to Never Say Never Festival, which was a festival that was around since 2009 all the way to 2016. I went to the 2013 version because Upon a Burning Body and Motionless in White were playing that year.
Yeah.
And I just said, oh, F it, I'll just go.
Yeah.
I had my mom buy me a ticket and everything, and I got taken there, and it was pretty cool. And then that's when I saw like a childhood friend that I hadn't seen in years that I did go to school with in middle school, and then I saw them in high school again. They were there with their friends and their sister, and I was just like so enticed by like how everything was like going on with that that concert. So it was pretty cool. And then after that, towards the summer, my freshman year of high school, I had that same childhood friend and my friend Esteban, I didn't know at the time, tell me like, hey, well, if you like NSN, there's like local shows here, not the same genre sometimes, but they're cool. You should come out to one. I was like, sure, when's the next one? They kind of sent me a flyer, and this is when I started getting Facebook. And then I just kind of went from there and just kind of started like being chronically online moving forward.
That's the start. Yeah. Facebook was the same thing with me, first social media. Funny enough, there was supposed to be a local show in my town, because my town's very small, it's La Villa. There is a person there who is now part of the music scene, not even now. Her name's Valerie. She's part of the Rituals team. She was doing a show there, and again, this was before I already knew about like the local music scene. And I remember seeing this flyer. It had a panda, and I think I had like a lightning bolt on it or something like that. And I really wanted to go to it because I'm like, wow, this is something very cool, something very different. And I know it's part of a school project for some reason. I don't know what the grade was for or whatever. Unfortunately, like it was conflicting with the church festival that I was like part of. But I'm just kind of like, damn, like this should have been like the first show that would have introduced me to like the local scene. And the fact that it's still like it's so interesting that like no matter how like big or small the scene is, like people always end up finding each other. Like how you mentioned, you start seeing your friends from high school and middle school. Same thing with her, where she was at the time he was like a close friend, and she was the older sister, and so like I don't know, like do you ever think about like how it's kind of I want to say it's fate, but like the scene always like brings people together, even though like you may have been like distant from these people, and it just all comes back together.
I do feel like sometimes the universe does have a way of telling us that, you should do something even if you're like scared to do it. I'm not like spiritual by any means, but I do know that there's some things that you can't really explain why they happen, but there is a reason why things happen. So, if you don't get into it at this time, who knows, years down the road, you might end up like having a brush of like, oh, well, I knew about this years ago, but I'm here now.
Yeah, because I remember we had a conversation a little bit earlier where like how you mentioned like you had all this experience in the scene very early on, and sometimes I get jealous of that, but like I'm pretty sure that happens to everybody, like wishing they joined something much earlier on. But I guess it's a matter of right time, right place.
I would say so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like I do regret kind of getting into it around the time I did because I would hear so many stories about like, the MySpace era because I was kind of a part of that, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
When MySpace was a thing, but not really. So
What was the
what
bad part of it about it? Or
well, not necessarily the bad part about it. I didn't have too much access to the internet, so I wouldn't be on
okay.
MySpace a whole lot. But just hearing all these stories about like all these types of bands that would come through and then like all these crazy tours that would hit McAllen because it was a hotspot after a while with
Oh
like how
wow.
much work other promoters that were like trying to push the deathcore or the metalcore or the scene or the scene in general, just like trying to bring like alternative acts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know like All Time Low played here like when they were barely starting out when they just had the demo out.
Oh
So
wow.
they played here. Chiodas played in a fucking house in a living room. My friend
Mm-hmm.
Brian was there, and just things like that. And then my friends Danny and Adam, two brothers that built VTHC up from the ground, they were just like booking whatever they could,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah,
Uh,
things like that.
Out of curiosity, do you think some of this stuff changed because of corporations? Because I was having this conversation with a friend, Nick from Canada Dealers. I was talking to him about another guy named Lalo Ramirez. He was like the promoter for Via de Real or Via Real.
Hmm.
Basically, he was bringing like Metallica, George Strait, like all these famous bands from different genres here to McKellen. And sometimes they would even skip San Antonio. And a point he was kind of bringing up was like maybe it's because like Live Nation and Ticketmaster kind of changed like the opportunities for promoters to get like these bigger bands. And so like now like we have to find like alternative methods of finding other popular touring bands that weren't part of the corporate structure. Have you ever thought about that? Because even now, like I'm pretty sure like who knows if we're gonna book down like the next all time low down here in the valley, but like we might get other alternatives to what currently exists, I guess.
I got you. So I do feel like corporations did have something to do with it because I
Mm-hmm.
do know with once I got integrated into like just being into like the music I'm into now, I did like end up like just by proxy and just like being curious. I did research that some bands were getting screwed over by some like record labels or like
Yeah.
corporations that they were a part of. So I feel like corporations did have a hand in kind of just like shifting things like from like the late 90s all the way up until now, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just like gradual changes. It wasn't like super apparent right away, but sometimes you could see it if it was apparent depending on who the band was.
Yeah.
So I would say it did have an effect, but it was just like a
It was
gradual,
very slow.
very like over time, and it's not compared to what you see now with like Live Nation, Ticketmaster,
Yeah,
and
like
like other big corporations kind of just taking over with like accessing venues that were once owned by like other people in the community or people that wanted to
and
give
then the
back.
bands have to go through their own Live Nation promoters and their venues. They can't go like with anybody else.
Yeah, it's real fickle because it just really depends. Because if that band already has like a booking agent that already has all these connects,
Mm-hmm.
or just has like something lined up for them, like they can either turn it down or they can just wait until the next opportunity comes up. But at the same
Mm.
time, it's just more so: do you want to take the opportunity now, or do you just want to wait until the next thing? Because it's it was very. I wouldn't say that's what I'm looking for. I wouldn't say it was like, oh, you can just bide your time. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just had to like hit it after like, post quarantine with like getting back out there and, building steam for your band or whatever musical endeavor you were going for. Because it was uncertain if live music was even gonna come back when, everything shut down like for a few years.
Yeah, I know we lost a couple of venues that again it was before I joined the scene, but like we had lost like Gitabidia and
Yeah.
some other venues.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would say, corporations did have their part into like, changing the aspect of like how, you know,
How certain bands I guess are booked.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
dang. And so you talked about you were again part of the scene. You didn't join the MySpace scene, but you joined the Facebook era. So
Correct.
how was that?
So it was interesting because like once I went to my first show and I couldn't remember the lineup for the life of me, but I do remember one band that played. It was Mascamarana. They're no
Mhm.
longer around. And that's when I like was like, whoa, okay, a local band can sound like this. Awesome. And then I saw people dancing, two-stepping, kicking each other, punching each other. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw that at NSM, but I just it never really clicked for me
yeah.
because I was just mainly a person that would like to circle pit. people circle pitted too on a local level. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I ended up getting like swung on like at that same show, and I'm like, oh, that kind of hurt, but I'm like, this is fun. So from then on air, I would just go to every local show that I could, like whether it was once or twice a week or like every other week, and I would just go from there. And I would just see like a ton of bands and just go from there, like whether it was regionally, locally, or like maybe it was a big one. Who's to say? But I did see a lot of shows in my lifetime.
Were there any like huge differences between like how those shows would be run or how they were compared to like what's going on right now?
I would say, yeah, there was a lot more nuance with using Facebook to promote as much as possible. I would still see physical flyering a lot more though in that time.
Yeah.
So they'd be handing out flyers for the next show, and they'd be looking at specific venues. It was only cash only. There was no e-payments at the time.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, you just had to make sure you had the cash.
And even now, I think that's still the preferred method, right? Because of stuff.
Yeah, just making sure the bands get paid and everything, and just take care of the expenses from there moving forward. But yeah, I just got into it in 2013, like summer 2013, and just never looked back since.
Out of curiosity, how much were the shows? Because I know inflation plays a part in the cost of a show. How much were shows back then, like a ticket?
So actually, I was thinking about that not that long ago, because now you see that different regions have specific set prices, and that just depends on the way of life. Here in the Valley now, you can see a show for $7 to $10. What used to be the case was either that show was $5 or maybe $6 at most. But that was it, Sometimes you'd have a expensive one, but that's just because a big band comes through, So you had to make sure you had the money for it.
So I'm pretty sure the expenses were the main ones are always the bands, but also the venue.
Correct.
Were venues like how would these venues operate?
So I wouldn't know the inner workings of that, because again, at the time I was really young and I was just like so immersed in like just wanting to like make friends and be in the scene. So
Yeah.
I would say at this point, now that I have like a little bit more of a seniority, like with how long I've been around, I would say with like how the venues operated, they just needed to make sure that there was a sound person, like making sure everything ran smoothly. Backline was available,
Where were these venues at? Like I guess throughout the Valley.
For sure. So the first one I ever went to was called Fallback Records. It's no longer in existence either. It's now like a telemarketing company or like an office or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But that was like in where Archer Park's at.
Okay, yeah.
So I used to go there a lot for shows, and then that eventually shut down. And there was a record store next to it, apart from like the actual venue. I only went into the record store once, but again, I wasn't really big into CDs or vinyl at the time, so I kind of missed out on like buying something to kind of just like have the physical media aspect to it, be like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I can find
Physical.
this.
And then what were the changes that you noticed throughout the year? Like I guess bands would come and go. That's very common. How was your experience seeing all these bands come and go, all these venues come and go? Like what did you start noticing? Or
So basically, from like the first time I went to Fallback Records up until I started seeing that close down, and then we went to the Sound Factory, that closed down. Then we went to other places, those didn't last that long, and then house shows were a thing too, and then the era of Via Cultura years later was a thing also once it started opening its doors. And yeah, just seeing like local bands like just kind of call it quits after a while.
yeah.
It was just very interesting, because I'm just like, like these people are still around, right? But they kind of just outgrew, not necessarily their use, but they just basically, their time was done after they just said, oh, we're done. We've did what we could, contribute as much as we can. We're done. Or, some personal stuff comes up, because that tends to happen. They're just like, I kind of just don't want to do this anymore. And that was just basically the extent of it. And that's when I started like brushing shoulders and meeting people and like, just punishing bands as like an early like 15-year-old, just be like, oh, I love this stuff. So I had my fair share of that. But yeah, just seeing that was just kind of interesting, because I didn't understand like the whole mechanics of it at the time. But then it just kind of made me want to keep coming out more and be like, oh, well, if bands stop playing, like other bands will start, sure. But I need to be at every single show that I can be to just continue supporting this. And that was just my mentality at the time. And I still carry that to this day.
Yeah. And how did you guys like keep up like with all the changes that were going on in the scene? Like did you just happen to find like the right people that were constantly jumping to the next area, or how did you keep up with everything? Because then I'm pretty sure there was venue changes, band changes, social media, I guess going from Facebook to Instagram or maybe some other platforms. How did you always like catch up with making sure you're current?
So Primary social media for me was Facebook at the time. Once that kind of started like transitioning a little bit, that like,
Mhm.
you can find things on Twitter.
Okay, Twitter.
I made a Twitter in freshman year of high school. I wasn't active on it a whole lot, but then I started meeting people that I still consider friends to this day
Mhm.
that would have Twitter. So I would find out about shows through there if they wasn't announced on Facebook, or if I found out about it too late. Sorry. And then Instagram, I made Instagram like sometime later. That one was like real. It's not what it is now. It was just like, oh, you just see posts and like,
Yeah, it was just
okay,
like
cool.
picture spaced. Yeah, yeah.
Just pictures. Like sometimes you don't even get updates. So you just kind of have to be a luck of the draw on Instagram. But Facebook and Twitter were like my main things to keep up with
Mhm.
everything. And then just end up meeting like some of the people that were promoting at the time. You know, some people that were not even around anymore. And, you know, just watching a bunch of promotion companies just pop up. And then some of them just stop being a thing after a while and just kind of go from there.
Do you think you learned lessons from those like mistakes that were done, or like those companies that fell down or promoters? Like, did you ever pick up lessons that you incorporate now to your stuff?
So I would say yes, mainly because I did like, you know, community is super small. Sometimes you hear things that you don't want to hear from people.
Yeah.
And it's not even that you're looking for it intentionally. Like sometimes you just hear through the grapevine.
What do you think would be like the biggest mistakes promoters tend to make?
So, and this is not exclusive to anybody,
Yeah.
but basically, a big mistake most promoters can do is just not even communicate effectively with what they're looking to do, or just be clear
Okay.
about like when hosting a show. So I've seen like promoters either lie about booking stuff, but it never comes true.
Mhm.
I've seen promoters like lie their way into like making sure a show does happen, but they just pocket all that money and dip.
Oh, yeah. I know. People who know like who I work with the very first time around, they're aware of
Yeah.
that stuff. It happens.
Yeah. And again, no one exclusive. I just did see that like become a trend.
No, yeah. You
like,
start
over
noticing
time.
those patterns because that's what I always tell people. Like when it comes to my podcast, like it's just kind of a behind the scenes type of thing. But I always tell people like, hey, if you're gonna talk negative about like negative experiences in general, it's best not to like talk about like the name of the venue or the band or like the people or the promoters, because people come and go, but those red flags, like they're always a pattern that you're always gonna notice, and it's better to speak publicly about that stuff just so bands and other people can be aware of that behavior.
Most definitely. And again, it's not a knock on anybody because I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure, there was intentions behind those. And then on top of that, there was just always like word of mouth, like, oh, well, F this, F that type deal. So people end up growing tired of the same old thing
Mhm.
after a while, whether it's like, just shows not being well attended, or maybe, this promoter kind of is not the best.
Yeah.
Just so many factors go into it. So
And so, like, let's say this promoter's out there, like, you're someone, that young person who wants to become like the next promoter. What advice would you give them to avoid all of those pitfalls?
So I would say being a promoter is kind of not an easy job.
Mhm.
Well, not kind of, it really isn't. You have to put a lot of work into it and a lot of time. If somebody wanted to learn how to book shows, basically the best advice I can give is just go to somebody that would be able to kind of guide you in the right direction.
Mhm.
Because it's always best to be around people that would be able to give you a good path on how to do something instead of just learning by trial and error.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people here, myself included, that have, shown some of these kids here a thing or two about how to do a certain thing.
Mhm.
Like, you have people here that have experience. It's in your best interest to kind of just seek that out if you can. If
Mhm.
you're shy, if you're a little scared, that's okay. I get it. I used to be in that position too.
Yeah.
But you can always rely on the people that have been around enough to be able to have a guiding hand and be able to tell you what you should and should not do, depending on what you're pursuing,
No,
whether it's
yeah,
a band or
I
a
100% agree
promotion.
with that. Yeah, because it's kind of like basically how I learned. It was what you recommended not to do. That's how I learned. It was just through trial and error. And yeah, I would recommend bands not bands, not even bands, but like just people in general. Like if you want to learn from a promoter, talk to them. They'll more likely help you,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of like people think like, oh, you just book bands, you talk to band, you book the band, that's it. Like no,
No, so much more that goes into it.
there's so much more that goes into it when it comes to the planning phase. And I think once you start like dealing with like bigger shows, like it becomes a little bit more mentally draining, because now you're not just speaking with, like when it comes to like a local show, you can just talk to the band, talk to the venue, and that's it. But then you start talking to managers, agencies, and sometimes they have like 3 steps where it's the agent, the tour manager, and then like the band manager, and it's kind of like this is a lot of communication. So I would recommend people like really learn from people who already have that experience
Most
and passing it on. Because I mean, for me, like if somebody asks me for help, which I am already doing, I'm doing that with promoters called Volume Search. They're from Brownsville,
Okay.
and I'm helping them out. I'm saying like, hey, like be very realistic with your expectations of like turnouts, the cost of the show, and also because the last thing you want to do is like not be able to make enough money, and then like you owe the band money, and then it's kind of like your reputation could be on the line. It's a very image-based business when it comes to the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
People speak really quick. They talk about people, and that stuff spreads really quick on social media.
Yep.
And again, sometimes it's a good thing because it warns bands and other people to be careful. But at the same time, I think sometimes
You can avoid all that.
people have drama between each other, and
Yeah.
then there's false information that happens where maybe people are just having personal drama, and that like feeds into that fire. So I would recommend people be very careful with that stuff.
Yeah, and that's one thing I did want to go back on. Like there was like a lot of drama
Mm-hmm.
that would happen like when I was coming around too. And again, some of it did involve me, some of it involved other people,
Yeah.
and then just stuff that happened by proxy, You're always gonna have a community. You're always gonna have people
Conflict,
in
yeah.
a community that are either just not worth their salt anymore because they end up doing something real dumb,
Mhm.
or just end up hurting too many people that they just need to be
Yeah.
removed. Simple as that. Or just things just happen and people kind of grow out of love with it. People move on. I get it. But there's so much that goes into like fostering a community. You need to just kind of understand where your place is most of the time. And if you want to
Mhm.
contribute more, by all means do it. But obviously, like I said, if you have people that have been around long enough to be able to guide you, if you have questions about anything, by all means reach out to those people.
And and on a positive note of all this stuff, where did your love for building community come from?
So when I started having the mentality of just coming to every show I could in the
Mhm.
first 5 years I was around, I ended up like meeting like all the people that I know now. So they were the ones that were like, giving goofy fucking teenager a chance to kind of just, be friends with them and just like hang out with them like when shows were a thing,
Mhm.
or maybe hang out outside of that. But I did have a lot of people be rude to me, but obviously it's just like the gatekeeping type of style where you
Yeah.
kind of just want to like see if this person will stick around or not, and I ended up doing that.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of like, once I got to know a good amount of people in this community, I kind of got into my head, well, all these people are basically like family to me at some point in time. What am I going to do to keep that?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do my part to just be present as I can. If there's something that goes down, what am I going to do to facilitate that situation if I can't handle it?
Yeah.
So it just goes back into like knowing how to be able to handle certain situations or be as open-minded as you can about, learning and changing with the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a lot that goes into it, and just kind of finding out that like, like loving the scene that I'm in now, the community aspect's the biggest one. People are very supportive of each other, although there are times where that's not the case, but it just really depends on the situation.
No, yeah, like once you have a giant group of people, there's bound to be some kind of conflict.
Yeah. And obviously, that can always be squashed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal, but my thing is just having a tight-knit community of the same people that would go to shows like for all these years, and they're still coming around, or they took a break, came back. It's cool to just be able to kind of just grow with people. That's where the building community building came from for me, because I kind of realized down the road, like, dang, almost 12 years I've been going to shows.
Yeah.
And I've watched all these people grow up. Even though I may not be close to a lot of these people, I
They were
watched
still
all
there.
these people grow up. I'm like, wow, you were my age. You were either a little bit older than me or my age when we started coming around, and look at you now. You're doing this. or you're in a band, or you're doing this. It just always like blows my mind because when I catch up with people, sometimes I'm like, damn, we were this age when we like met, and look where we're at now. You know, it's a very beautiful thing.
No,
I wouldn't take it for granted at any point in time.
It's very rare. Like even now, like most people like they switch jobs. So I think the average is like 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes you just stay with a company for a long time. So like you'll see coworkers come and go, but sometimes there's like that tight knit group. But I mean, 12 years. I mean, you don't even see that with school because school's like what 4 years for high school, 4 years, 3 or 4 years middle school. Like even all of that changes. So the fact that you were able to have these consistent group of people that you saw grow up. I mean, it's a very beautiful thing.
Just making connections and just just watching things just grow and come in waves. It's been awesome, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's also molded me as a person. So I'm very thankful to be here still to this day and just be able to kind of at least maybe teach a person here and there if they kind of need advice on something. I'd be able to at least offer that. Not just me exclusively, like all of us like together would be able to kind of help foster like the next generation of showgoers, the next generation of kids that want to be in bands and want to do all these things to continue keeping this going. Cause we're all fine. We all have a finite time with like making sure this stays around. Cause so time's not really guaranteed. You never know what's going to happen. So it's always a forethought in the back of my mind. And I've always had bouts with, dang, how do I go about this?
Keep talking. Right now, I'm going to check something real quick. You keep talking.
I was like, dang, how do I go about this? How do I figure this out with situations regarding like, oh, well, things are not feeling the best, or excuse me, or just feeling burnt out in general with like how things are maneuvering. It's just very interesting. No, you're good.
Either way, I got it. Oh, you're still going on, so we're good in that part.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I always get scared because like when something happens, and it happened to me before. Good thing I caught it this time. Either way, we're going on the audio side. Oh, someone's here. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think people shouldn't take time for granted because it really hits like once you start getting like in your 20s, mid-20s, when I guess the unfortunate part is sometimes people do pass away. And so like this past year, like I lost one of my classmates from high school, and I wasn't particularly close with him, but it's still the fact that this is someone you knew for so many years and now they're gone. And like there's nothing you can do about it. It just happens. And I'm pretty sure there's people in the scene that are no longer with us anymore. And it's kind of like it sucks, but like it is part of life. And the only way for things to continue is to like teach the next generation of kids that, hey, you want to be in a band, you want to do shows. I mean, this is the way to do it. And then hopefully they pass it on later on.
Most definitely. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people pass away, unfortunately, in my time, and not even people I'm either relatively close with in the scene. Like I've seen like friends of friends like pass away. So
yeah, and
it's not a good thing.
It's very unfortunate because it's young people, it's people our age, it's people younger, and I mean it's really again it is unfortunate, but like that's why people should like really take the time to appreciate what we have right now because it's never guaranteed.
Yeah, and then I've had people like in my personal life, only like people that I like knew in passing or like knew enough. They passed away recently too, or a couple years ago, what have you. So it's always like it kind of eats at my mind a little bit with like just appreciating everything that I can, because sometimes I've taken things for granted. I did become jaded at one point after a while, so
yeah,
it's kind of getting myself out of that rut was probably one of the better decisions I made when things started kind of changing in terms of like this community. So very grateful.
And in what other ways do you find the scene like very positive in your mental like mentality, I guess? Like what positive benefits come from it?
So apart from just being molded by it and with all the things that I like think about now and like what it made me kind of just change as a person. If I'm having a bad day, and there's a show going on, I'm just like, okay, let me just stress myself here. See some friends, chop it up, blah, go from there. Um, having something to look forward to is probably the bigger components that I can think of. Mainly just because, in our daily lives, everybody has something going on. So just kind of taking it out one step at a time with just having something to look forward to.
Hello. No, it's closer now. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds
cool.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having like that, something to look forward to because everybody has something going on different in their lives. If all of us collectively together come through to just have fun and de-stress from like
Mhm.
anything that's like stressing us in our lives, it's probably the biggest positive thing I can think of.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it's the same. For me, it's just because I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm like, I think it would have been crazy like if I wasn't part of the team because I don't know exactly where I would be. Part of it is because like again, once you go from high school to college, like your friend group starts changing, and I started losing my high school group, my friend group from high school around like a little bit like a year or two after high school. And again, people grow apart from each other. It happens. And so I was very fortunate that during that like transitional phase, I was becoming part of the scene. I started doing interviews, and I'm starting like, wow, like it's a great thing. I got to meet all these people, and some of the bands I met, like it was just pure coincidence. It was the fact that like I had this thing planned, but someone couldn't show up, or something happened here, and then so I went to a show over here, and all of that stuff. Like it just lined up perfectly to the fact that like, hey, now I'm part of this community now, and I don't know, it's very beautiful. I think it's just the fact that like, okay, I found a group of people where it's very hard finding communities now because I guess like back then it was like mostly like churches or something like that, or like sports, but there's never something like that's very consistent in terms of like being part of the community now. Especially now, I think there's something called like the loneliness epidemic going on in the United States where people are feeling less and less together, and so we're very fortunate to be part of a in real life community as opposed to just purely online. Because again, you can be part of Reddits, Discords, but it's not going to replace that human connection, that physical connection that we all have together here.
100%. And I did have my bouts of depression when I was growing up, like in high school, and just having like a bunch of like really bad experiences like growing up. So having this community did help out with that a lot, and just like make me realize that, hey, I'm not truly alone. And if I could offer that same like reassurance to somebody else, whether it's somebody I know or not, I think that's like the best thing that you can do, is just offer that same reassurance that, hey, like even if you feel like you don't know anybody here in this room, like you can just come up and talk to somebody, and 8 out of 10 times they'll like be just able to welcome you. No problem.
No, yeah, that's what I like about the shows now, that you can just talk with anybody, and most people they'll talk to you. I mean, I see people share, like, again, I don't encourage it, but it's part of the scene. Like when people like are vaping or like sharing cigarettes. Again, I'm not a big person on that stuff, but like the fact that it still like builds, like it's an icebreaker for talking, and people get along. And it's kind of like, oh shit, that's badass. You don't need to know everybody just to feel welcome. I guess that would be the way of putting it.
Most definitely, because there's even times where I don't even know some of these younger kids here, and I'm just like, oh well, they come up to me and they're just like, oh, you're the person that kicks so high, and I'm like, oh my god, yes, that's me.
That's like, so like, how are you like seen in terms of the scene? Like, how do you think people see you, or from what you've heard of at least? Obviously, that's one of them. I mean, you kick high.
Yeah, I try not to kind of think about it too much because I'm just a person at the end of the day. But I try not to let it make me develop an ego, because that's kind of weird.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I can say from personal experience, I do know that there's at least like a person or two, or maybe more than I am thinking of, that do look up to me in a certain aspect. So I think I did have someone tell me that a long time ago, but this is not even like a community really. Just I did have somebody tell me like a long time ago when I was working a specific job, when I took a specific position, that like, oh, you're considered a role model in this position. I think you should kind of like consider that. And I was like, okay, cool. I kind of denounced the idea at that time, but then once I started like doing more for the community, I kind of realized like, well, yeah, I am gonna take a role model position whether I like it or not. So I kind of need to be very mindful what I do and how I do things, and then I need to just be nice to people as much as I can.
And then make sure it's working again.
For sure. So it's just You're good. So it's just a matter of just making sure that I'm like doing things correctly for myself. And then most importantly, that other people do take notes so they can just figure things out from there if there ever is a similar situation that they go through. So even if you don't feel like a role model position is something that you'd be interested in, like just in general, no matter who it is, like just keep in mind there's somebody that probably potentially could be looking up to you. So, you know, just do things for yourself, be a good person,
Yeah.
and just go from there.
I think with the role model stuff, I think people think they can choose to be a role model, but you're just thrown into it. You don't get a choice in it.
Yeah, that I can say there's some truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, some people think like, oh, I want to become a role model, but like, no, like, you become a role model once you become like prominent in the community, and that takes years. It takes work. Like, there's a lot of trust involved. Then eventually, people like, I guess not in the pedestal, but like you start becoming a little bit more up here. Where again, like if you're heavily involved with everything, you're gonna become a common face. I mean, like, it's like if you're working for a company and you're constantly being the face of it, you get associated with that position.
Yep.
So again, this is not an ego thing or like a thing. It's just a role that happens as you become more involved in the community, or you're consistently involved in it, as opposed to just in the sidelines.
It's true, because I was a body like for years at shows, but the only thing that people would distinguish me out from there is be like, I'd always be the one popping off for bands every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how people knew me. And then like once some people started getting to know me because they were just like, oh, well, I've seen you around for years, but I never even bothered talking to you because, you know, everybody has their cliques, their friend groups. And that's what I did see a lot growing up. There's still a problem with that, obviously, but obviously, you know, trying to, you know, just be as civil with as many people as I can or get close to at least some people. I feel like that's like the bare minimum you can do if you're going to be around and become like someone that's going to be around and you're going to know who they are. So
Yeah.
you kind of just have to take it with a grain of salt with that.
I know the clique issue that issue will never be solved because that's more of a tribal friendship type thing.
Correct.
But what do you think people can do to navigate through those situations? Because again, sometimes there are people who don't like each other for whatever reason, well, valid or not. How do you like navigate those issues when you're within the community?
So
And you have to work with everybody, basically.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So basically, I do tell people sometimes because I've had to de-escalate a situation before, whether it's at shows of mine or like other people's shows. I was like, hey, even if you don't like each other, I need you to fucking squash it right now because there is literally no point to even escalate this further. And I don't say it in that tone, right? But I just basically just say like, hey, if you have an issue, I need you to settle it outside right now because this is not the time. And then, you know, we just have people talk it out and see what goes from there. If it escalates further, plus obviously I have to get involved, right? So then I just tell them like, hey, like you need to cut it out. Like if you don't like each other for a reason, you need to leave that outside because this is a community at the end of the day. You can't just expect that you can do whatever the fuck you want and have no sort of consequence to it. People are going to check you on that, whether it's, you know, myself or somebody else.
Yeah.
So you got to realize like, although you may not get along with everybody here, you're going to be here for a common reason. So don't spoil that for yourself. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and that's something people should realize. Like, if you're ever going to become a promoter, you cannot be someone who likes to avoid confrontation because sometimes it's going to be necessary.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you have to get involved and say, like, hey, no.
Yeah, put your foot down on certain things.
And it's not just that. Like another issue, I guess people have noticed is like when bands come late, how to handle that situation. Like whenever, like to say they show up 30 minutes late or an hour late. Because I have seen that not at my shows, but like I've seen that at other shows where bands, they choose to come like 30 minutes late, an hour late, and then they take forever to set up. Like if you're ever gonna be a promoter, like you need to know how to handle those situations and say, hey, like if they take forever, you have to cut them out of the set. I mean, otherwise you're gonna push the entire set forward, and then maybe the headliner gets screwed over or someone else at the end.
Yeah, there's just like a lot that goes into with, you know, just communicating effectively and how to maneuver specific situations. Because I don't get along with certain people. You know, it's fine. It's a part of life. But you got to realize that you have to be civil with people up to a certain point. So the thing is, you just kind of have to pick and choose your battles on like when it's okay to, you know, be confrontational about things or be able to maneuver a situation where you can just talk it out. Because you can always talk it out majority of the time. There's few times where that is not the case. But we're not here to teach like the younger generation of showgoers that you need to fight every single person every single time. You have to take not the pacifist route. You have to take the reasonable route first before you decide, okay, well, enough is enough. Let's duke it out.
What would be like, I guess, your guidelines to figuring out which is the right situation to would you consider choose your battles? Which like what are your like do you have like guidelines or like certain advice to tell people like, okay, this is serious, this is something that can be easily solved?
So I don't necessarily have guidelines, but I can just say my biggest thing is just play it by ear.
Okay.
You know, you're not always going to be able to be equipped to handle a lot of situations, and I'm still learning to this day, just as much as the next person. But I do know for a fact that if there's like, easy example, there's like two kids fighting at a show because somebody got hurt, somebody got hit, and they couldn't take it. All a matter of that is just pulling those two aside, having them talk it out, and if they start arguing with each other, you just kind of you be the mediator and be like, hey, okay, if you want to argue, that's fine, but I need you to understand that like this is a part of like this like show atmosphere. If you don't like it, you can stand somewhere else. You don't have to be a part of the action. It's that simple. And then, you know, just have them kind of like, you know, shake hands, hug it out, whatever.
Yeah.
Go from there. That's like an easy fix for like a simple situation, a simple example like that.
Which has been like the most complicated situation you had to handle, and how did you resolve that?
Kicking out an abuser. That's never an easy one.
Okay, how did you handle that one?
So that one, you have to take that one with very careful motion, only because people can lie about other people. But you also want to give benefit of the doubt of whoever's relaying this information to you that it's from a good intention. And I've unfortunately been pulled into many situations where people have either embellished the truth a little bit or they've said something that was not correct.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to maneuver a certain way. But yeah, just kicking somebody out that is not like welcome because they did this thing to this person or they did something really fucked up to somebody. You just have to maneuver the situation. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where you have to gather a lot of testimonial evidence or like physical evidence to kind of like assess and be like, okay, this person will no longer be welcome for this reason.
Yeah, because that's always the toughest part about the scene where, at least from what I noticed, sometimes people have to dogpile people, and whether it's vetted or not, like that's always the tricky part, figuring that situation. But I guess there's like a human instinct to like always dogpile on someone.
Yeah.
Just on what they hear about social media. But that's what I find the scary part about it, where if you repeat a lie like just enough of times on social media, people will start thinking it's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the scary part I find about like not just like the scene, but just like in general, like when it comes to society, where if you constantly repeat something, even though it's not true, like people start believing it's true.
Yeah, and most of these times, like situations that are very like sensitive like that need to be handled privately. It's very rare that you can call it out unless it's a pattern.
Yeah.
But again, each situation like that is going to be very different. So just having to like handle that and kind of just like come up to somebody and be like, hey, I heard all these things from these people. I need you to get out because you are not welcome here.
Yeah.
And then pulling somebody aside that was offering drugs to young kids, that was another one I had to deal with too. And then them sexually harassing somebody in the same night too.
Oh, damn.
So that person, I had to like talk to them and be like, I'm not necessarily kicking you out, but I'm giving you a fair warning. If you do anything like that again, I'm going to physically throw you out.
Yeah. The drug situation is always an interesting one to me because like certain drugs seem to be permissible, I guess. Like people like turn a blind eye, but then there's certain stuff that I guess wouldn't be considered good, I guess, or like it's not considered socially acceptable. I don't know what the right word would be. How do you guys draw the line when it comes to that?
Well, first things first, I don't want to have a kid literally smoking like a really hard drug, like for example, crack, and then like offer it to like another kid. I'm like, yo, you need you need to take that somewhere else. You need to like literally, because this is not the time to be just like getting like super fucked up and then making it everybody else's problem.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you can't have fun. You just need to know like right place, right time for specific things. Like, as if you have someone that got stupid wasted at a show, and this has happened a handful of times that I've been around, they need to kind of realize like, hey, if you can't handle yourself, like to be in a public setting where you need to like,
yeah, you gotta go.
Like if whether it's like you smoke too much or indulge too much in whatever vice you have, like you need to know your limits if you're going to be in a public setting, because you can't expect everybody to carry that burden for you, unfortunately.
No, yeah, that's definitely. And that's always the part I always get concerned about, because it's not just the scene, but like it's always been an issue with rock, just in general. Like there's always like drug abuse,
sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah. Like making sure like you keep people safe. I mean, that's another important part of being a promoter or just being in the scene in general, looking out for each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's all we have at the end of the day is just us. Like you can't rely on anybody else but yourself and the people that you consider a community or friends. Like
Where do you think all this advocacy comes from? Because like again, I'm not super involved in the hardcore scene, but like, what is all the advocacy in terms of being involved with each other when it comes to like the physical violence? How was that like figured out? You know the history of that or no?
I do a little bit. So I mean, I've been around enough and done enough, like digging into like being into hardcore from late 2013 to early 2014. Let me go on a tangent about that first before I get into that. But you know,
I love tangents.
So yeah, me getting into hardcore when I was just like a deathcore scene kid, a reformed death. When I started to become a reformed deathcore scene kid, I ended up discovering hardcore because I saw people wearing like, you know, shirts like Expire, Bane, Terror, etc. Stick to your guns. I just see that a lot. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't understand what that is, but let me look these up. Some of those bands did resonate with me up to a certain point, but I just never really like followed through with it. And then it wasn't until I was either shown or I had it recommended to me. I was more likely shown than anything. Somebody showed me Backtrack and I heard Backtrack and I was like, cool. I like this. Then I heard Backtrack, then I heard Rotting Out. Someone recommended me Rotting Out, and I heard Rotting Out. I heard Street Prowl for the first time. I was like, whoa, that's cool. And then after that, somebody introduced me to Turnstile, and that was game over. And I literally heard Pressures to Succeed EP and like Scepter Rhythm, and I saw a live set of them. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. What the fuck? So from there on, I was like rocking with Turnstile hard. And then someone told me, like, well, if you like Turnstile, you should check out TY. I was like, that's Trapped Under Ice. That's the singer's other band. He's drums for it. And I'm like, okay, checked out everything, demo, split. Nothing really resonated with me. Checked out the first EP, the first full length, didn't resonate with me. It wasn't until I heard Big Kiss Goodnight that it just stuck with me. Yeah. And those 4 bands were the thing that wrote me into hardcore.
That was like the foundation right there.
Yeah, and then I started getting into things like early Ghost Inside, early Stick to Your Guns, early Counterparts, early 100th, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just
when you say early, like what changed between these bands? Because you keep saying like a lot of like early band, early this.
So for those ones that I just mentioned, they end up having a stylistic change over time. So for example, 100th was a straightforward like hardcore band. They were just really fast. They ended up becoming a Shugazi band later on. Counterparts was on the bridge of like that metallic hardcore sound, but more so metalcore. Then after the demo and the first full length, they went in more into that more metalcore sound, like Misery Signals and Poison the Well type shit. So, and then Stick to Your Guns, basically, were still a hardcore band, but they were just more so on the, we're gonna invoke that sound and sound more like a California band.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to explain that last one, but yeah. Ghost Inside basically just became more metalcore.
And so like what separates all these genres? Because like when it comes to me, like I'm not sure you've ever seen the meme with the guy that shows like different colors, like blue, pink, red, and it shows like the girl with a bunch of like different colors, like, oh, this is salmon, this is peach. That's how I feel to me because I'm not like super familiar. So like, how do you separate all these different genres?
Well, it takes time to be honest, because when you kind of develop your music taste over time, you kind of can distinguish what makes a genre different. For example, hardcore, it's either fast, heavy, aggressive, blah 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 blah. Metalcore, very harmonic, very beautiful, very it has like some parts that sound really like obscure and scary. Nu metal, it's just like very chaotic. Just to give a few examples, you kind of just start distinguishing what makes a band in that genre different from like another band from a specific genre.
Yeah, because that's always been the part where like I was getting confused. I'm like, oh well, it sounds hard. Well, probably it's hardcore, but no, there's complete distinct.
Yeah, there's like you said, guidelines for each genre, and obviously I'm not here to be like, oh well, that is metalcore. No, like if you think a band is hardcore, it may be hardcore, but it may not also be hardcore. So you kind of have to your develops over time when you start like getting into music,
getting involved.
Getting into music and like getting involved, like you'll be able to distinguish bands right away.
What do you think that's really a really popular genre down here? Because when it comes to like other scenes I talk to, like sometimes other genres are more popular, like indie or pop or country, whatever. Why do you think here in the valley, like hardcore seems to be like a really popular genre?
So for that question specifically, I know when I was getting into this, hardcore was popular, but I wouldn't go to the hardcore shows until like way later on.
So what shows would you go to then?
I'd go to like the deathcore, metalcore shows, like the Rise Records era type stuff,
Uh-huh.
and then like Artie Records and things of that nature. And then once I was at the tail end of that trend, and then after that, I started kind of going to some of the more mixed bills and the more hardcore shows after that. And I kind of just snowballed from there. And then I know for a good while, like, indie was a big one here too.
Yeah.
The indie scene was a big one here. Like artists like Phanogram, Neon Indians, freaking, who else? Mannequin Pussy before they even like got big. Some of those like artists or bands came through here, big. Indie was big here. Bunch of like, people that were like into art and like alternative stuff. Indie was a huge thing here. I mean, heck, when my friend Patrick, who runs Pluto's Tiger's Blood, had the Galaxy Fair Fest, he brought Elvis Presley. He brought bands like Power Trip and things of that nature, all into like an account constellation of like, oh, you want to see a show here? It's at this venue. Go to this venue if you want to see this other show here.
Yeah.
And yeah, he kind of just coordinated like the more festival, like interconnected DIY festival. He's even booked Self Defense Family, Alex G, before they even blew up.
Yeah.
So indie scene has always been a big thing here. But hardcore was like, it had its niche.
Yeah.
It was very small, but then it started developing over time.
Yeah, I guess I should explain. Like, I mean, more like the local scene, because right now, like the indie scene is not as popular as it, I guess as it was back then. But like right now, the hardcore scene is like
booming. Yeah,
it is the main thing.
Yeah, it has to do with TikTok, to be honest, because a lot of kids that would come around, I'd see them wearing Dystopia shirts or like a Terror shirt or what have you, and it was because of like apps like TikTok. Rest in peace. For right now,
It's actually already back too.
There it is.
Surprisingly, you can check right now. Like it's back. I don't know what happened, but
that's hilarious. But yeah, I would say TikTok, Instagram, and like just YouTube had a huge influence. Like when quarantine was a thing.
Yeah.
That a lot of these kids like discovered like power violence and like hardcore and punk, and seeing all these kids just be about it, and then like doing the Y2K look, they basically just kind of be like, oh, I like hardcore.
Yeah. That's interesting, like a viewpoint of it. For me, the way I seen it, I guess you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I tend to look at things like social economically, and so from my understanding, certain genres tend to do heavier. It's not completely based on that, but it's the factor in it when it comes to income levels, and so like the lower an income level is, the more aggressive the taste for the music tends to be. So you'll start seeing the hardcore music, you start seeing rap, R&B, and then the higher the income, the more like lighter the music is. So like really rich people, they love classical music, and they'll tend to like look down upon like rap and rock and all that stuff. But they'll love classical music or even like pop. They'll be okay with it. And so I was curious, like, do you think the different waves of the economic level, so like goes on in our country, like it actually affects our musical taste? Sorry, I spit right there.
You're good.
And since the Valley's like a very lower income area, do you think that aggression that people have because they want a better life, there's so much to be mad about in this world?
Yeah.
Specifically in this area, I was wondering like maybe that's what influences like the hardcore, like the love of it, because you're able to show off all your aggression. It's promoted. It's in a positive way, as opposed to, I guess, some of our like, I guess, like, again, I could say like my father or like other people, like older men in the scene in the world here, where they show off their aggression in negative ways. And so I'm wondering like maybe that's part of the reason why, because if you look at indie, it's the complete opposite, where if you look at bands like the Strokes, they came from very privileged backgrounds. They went to like really top tier schools. So I'm wondering if that also plays a factor into the musical taste here in the Valley as well.
So that's a good question. So basically, with my understanding, socioeconomic
kind of play a part in the trends of music. Because we have to remember, like when indie was popular, that was like what, mid 2010s.
Correct.
So there was kind of like some like economic success during that time compared to right now, where people are really angry about like the price of eggs, the price of just inflation in general. People are very angry. So in some ways, it kind of helps alleviate, like it becomes like a, how do you say it? Like, yeah, I guess it becomes a release of all this anger that's happening right now in the world. And it kind of helps where music's a positive outlet for it.
Yeah. So I do think like socioeconomic status does have a role in like how people develop their music taste. If it doesn't matter where you come from though, in my opinion, because I've seen rich people get into hardcore, but you can obviously know right away what their intentions are, like that.
And you can see like the difference, the way they act versus someone that's really part of it and grew up with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So socioeconomic status does have something to do with it.
It's just like one factor. I mean, it's like the main factor, but it's just part of it. That's the way I view it, at least.
For sure. It's one factor that goes into do with it. And then, people's like personal lives, what they've experienced and gone through. If they end up finding this music in one way or another, if it resonates with them at some point to some degree, then that's when they'll be like interested in it. For me, like I've had my experiences like growing up, so kind of just being like able to kind of resonate and be like, oh, well, that person's angry for something that I'm not necessarily familiar with, but I had something similar happen to it. Cool. I can kind of attest to it. And even to this day, even though I'm growing up and I'm like 27 at this time, like I already kind of like been whatchamacallit, the demographic for hardcore has already passed me.
Yeah.
Because it's like from like from like 10 to 25 is usually like the age demographic like hardcore and punk, because that's, it's always going to be for the youth. It's always going to be for the fucking youth. But for me, I've already outgrew my demographic, but I'm still like here because it still resonates with me to some point. It's still part of my life. So if I can tell some of these kids like, hey, this is for you. Like, I want it to be for you. It's not for me anymore, but it's going to be for you. I'm still going to participate, but this is going to be for you.
Yeah.
So, just to tell them like, hey, like, get involved in this as early as you can, because it's awesome. Like, although I may have outgrew the demographic that the genre is for, I'm still going to be participating into it. I'm going to participate into it until like, I am not physically able to come out anymore, or I pass away, whatever comes first.
Yeah. The reason why I got curious with all that stuff is because I was trying to figure out why certain genres are certain popular in certain areas. So like when it comes to emo, like it's the whole Midwest emo. Something about that environment encourages that kind of music. When it comes to SoCal, indie tends to be really popular there. So that was just me trying to figure out like what is it exactly, what factors, what environment leads to these genres to be so popular in that area, and it becomes like a petri dish for growth.
Yeah, most definitely. And like I said, economic status has something to do with it. Life experience has something to do with it. Being able to have access to the internet has something to do with it too. Depending on the region, also has a big factor on what you do, because some areas in the country don't even have a scene.
Yeah.
Well, they did, but it's no longer existing anymore. So yeah.
Have you seen that like in your? Because I know you traveled a lot when it came to like different shows. Have you seen certain scenes just disappear completely?
None of my experience, no, but I've seen some scenes like kind of have their waves too, or they can just grow exponentially big. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about like how the violence aspect for hardcore comes. So basically it goes back to like the late 70s, early 80s. That's when it was being invented.
Yeah.
I can't tell you who the first band that actually made like hardcore punk music was, because I can't even remember at this time.
Yeah.
But just fast, aggressive, in your face type of music was like not necessarily unheard of, because indie and alternative and rock music was like the biggest thing ever.
Yeah.
At that during those times. So having like something small like that boister into having people just come in droves, just like jumping and fucking stage diving on each other and slamming into each other, that was just like, oh, it's aggressive. You got to be aggressive somehow. So you would have people push pitting and slamming into each other and stage diving on each other, grabbing the mic and, just like skanking around. Those are the things that you would see. And then you'd have bands like, Outburst, Bad Brains, Wide Awake, Cro-Mags, motherfucking Agnostic Front, things of that nature. It was really concentrated in New York, from my understanding. So New York hardcore was like a big thing. CBGB shows, if I'm not sure if you ever seen videos of like CBGB shows.
No.
But those were like always like big. Like Bad Brains was a big one too. I forgot to mention that. Bad Brains is a big one, when they had to put out the self-titled and Eye Against Eye, big explosion there. HR would be doing crazy backflips, like performing. So the aggression aspect's always been there, but it's always been in slamming and push pitting. It wasn't until like later on when things started getting more violent because of, neo-Nazis and Nazis being infiltrating in the scene, in that space, people had to defend themselves. So they had to use weapons and they had to use their hands and fists or whatever to like defend themselves.
I know there was something with Doc Martens having like different shoelaces, like the colors. Also,
Oh, so lace code was a thing, but it's not a thing anymore.
yeah, like but during that time was that was part of it at that era or no?
I would say a little bit. I can't really tell you if it was like a huge factor, but you can kind of tell like who's who. But yeah, I mean, skinheads were a thing. But there's good skinheads and bad skinheads.
Well, how do you I guess how do you tell the difference? Or
well, it depends because like around that time, you know, Nazis were always just like real apparent about like, oh, well, you know, fuck you, we're the superior race type shit.
yeah.
And you know, skinheads were like kind of involved into that because there was a band called Warzone that was like real like big in the skinhead culture, but it was just kind of tough to tell the difference. You'd see them in bomber jackets, you know, the Doc Martens with the different laces, etc. You know, insignias tattooed on them, things of that nature. So they would just be booted out, you know. They would be beat physically.
What would the good ones stand for? Because I'm pretty sure more people are familiar with like the bad ones. What would the good ones stand for? Like, what was their thing?
They'd be against racism, and they'd be working class people. So there's this subsect that ended up becoming like apparent like years down the road called Sharps, which is skinheads against racism.
Okay.
So yeah, you know, things of that nature would pop up. And, you know, it's just when they were trying to like boot out all these Nazis, like in the 80s and 90s, that's what it was. So they would, you know, use whatever means to defend themselves and boot these people out and get them the fuck out of there because they don't have no place there. They really don't. So that's when like punching and kicking were like slowly just starting to become integrated into like the show environment from there on because it was violent. People would get stabbed, people would get shot because of things like that. And then, you would see early photos in the 90s of like bands like Burn or Marauder when they started coming around, like Saw from Marauder, like spin kicking somebody and hitting him in the face like that. Or like Chaka from Burn fucking like spin kicking somebody like real like the trophies you see for like participating in karate where they do like that. He'd like fucking spin kick somebody real bad in the face. So it was like really funny.
Oh damn. RP cookie.
Nah. By second roll.
You got it for second roll? Got it.
Oh, roll.
And that's another thing I'm wondering about because, again, you mentioned like how the scene was developed in New York. When people think about New York, people think of like really aggressive people compared to California, where you think of like really like calm, peaceful, more soft. So I wonder like that's part of the influence too, where in an environment like New York, hardcore can exist, and then in California, it makes sense that indie would exist because it's more like, again, people complain about like where it's either nice, like fake niceness or not, but like it's still like a more calming area. So
yeah.
I wonder if that like also plays a part into it.
Well, people had a lot to be mad about because that was when Reagan was president.
Yeah.
You know.
But just in general, New York is considered like a more like people that are considered like more aggressive and tough towards each other.
I would say so. Yeah. I've
It's
been
like
in
a
there a
stereotype.
couple of times.
Yeah, it's more of a stereotype. Again, this is what I'm talking about. And in California, you think like, oh, well, everybody's enjoying the beach and all that stuff. So
yeah, well, it depends on region by region because people have stuff to be mad about for like the place they're living at. I know New York is like really like a popular like place to visit and like live in. But a lot of people have a lot of things to be angry for. It's like there's some parts that are really dirty and run down. There's other places that are like really ghetto.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. And then, you know, politicians in New York haven't always been the best because that's when mobs were really concentrated there at the time.
Oh yeah. People talk about that all the time, like how what's it called, the what's the street called, the main street where like it's not like commercialized, like back then it was considered like very dirty. The main street is known for.
It's not Broadway. I know it's not Broadway. I can't remember.
Times Square.
There we go.
That was like, back then it was considered like very like a lot of like nude films would go on there, like weird drug deals, and now it's like it's very commercialized.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, that's where mainly the aggression came from. You know, just like, you know, violence being be necessary because
and then it became part of the shows.
It became part of the culture like later on. So when people complain about crowd killing or getting clipped at a show, I just tell them like, yo, don't make me point at the sign. It all started in the 80s. Either you are going to understand this later on and learn about it. By all means, I'm not saying you have to like be a fucking PhD. Yeah. Have a PhD in like.
What is crowd killing? Because I remember recently, like maybe like a month or two back ago, there was like this post going around between people talking about it. I'm pretty sure you saw it too. Well, so what was that all about?
So my thing is just like, I hate the term because I don't like using it.
Yeah.
But my thing is just like, again, it's called hardcore. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
For people who aren't familiar, what does the term crowd killing mean, and why do you disagree with it?
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with the term. It's just like It's basically just like, oh, you basically you hit people in the crowd during like a specific part when a band's playing. That's all it really is. Like you can either throw a kick, a punch, or you can just throw yourself onto them, whatever comes first. But I just don't like the term because it has this negative connotation, like, oh, you're intentionally doing it. Yeah, sometimes that does happen, okay, but sometimes it's accidental. But obviously, you know, it depends on the type of band it's playing. It's like, I'll give you an example. Like if I was seeing like a band like sorry, I'm drawing a blank. If I was gonna see like a really hard band like early Code Orange, I'd be like, oh, that's like making my mind like go a certain way. I'm gonna I'm gonna be fucking
Yeah.
going off, you know. If I were to see a band like Hatebreed, which I did see like years later, I'd be like popping off, you know, like how it was in the 90s. People would just be grabbing the air and shit and just like, you know, doing crazy spin kicks.
Dang.
So yeah, you know, it's just a part of the violence aspect is a part of this like subgenre of music. It's part of the culture. You can't escape it. You can try to have like certain aspects of the culture change, but that's not going to change.
Yeah. No,
It's never going to change.
No, yeah. People expect mosh pits and all that stuff. It's standard.
Yeah, there's no standards for mosh pits. Like it's going to get violent. Unfortunately, you can't always control it. It's a controlled violent environment.
Chaos, yeah,
It's
yeah.
controlled chaos. It's what it is. If you want to complain about it, that's fine. But you know, those who complain the most won't get it. For those who end up getting it later on, they understand that like, oh, I'm not doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, cause I can hit my friends all fucking night, and we'll still dap each other up like it's nothing. And they do the same to me. I've absorbed so many hits over the years that it doesn't even like faze me, because I know and I understand where this is coming from.
So do you think that person was just somebody new to the scene that didn't get it, or?
That's usually what the case, but obviously there's people that have been around that never had that happen to them until recently, so they're kind of just like shocked, like, oh, why did that happen? Oh, this should not be a thing. And it's like, you don't understand the connotation of it.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to explain it to you if you are curious, but obviously people are going to learn over time by experience and by somebody telling them like, hey, this is what happens.
Yeah.
That simple.
Dang. Oh yeah. So that's always the thing. I always try to like. That's what I always thought. I'm like, how do people not get into fights? But people have that understanding, so that makes sense.
It's supposed to be a thing that we're supposed to like. It's an unspoken rule.
Yeah.
You know, like there's like unspoken rules that happen in all genres. Like, you know, you just be mindful of each other. It's basically that's all it is. And then speaking of violence, so going back, there's this photo that's very popular. It's when the band Floor Punch from New Jersey played a show in California. There's a bunch of neo-Nazi skinheads that came to that show. They're looking to cause trouble. There's a photo where there's a person with a baseball bat, a small bat, going to crack somebody's skull. And then there's a guy with a tire iron about to swing on somebody unsuspectedly.
Yeah.
And they were just looking to cause problems. So they beat the fuck out of all those people. And then there's more photos where they literally grab one person, they have him pinned against the stage, and they start curb stomping the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And then you see a photo where there's like 3 other people in the same getup that like are attending that person that's knocked out. So yeah, you know, the violence aspect's always been around. It's not going to change. Just to keep it short.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And so then we go from that. We're going from the history, right? We're heading somewhere. We're heading towards something else right now. I'm trying to remember right now. So we're going from the violence, and then I guess you could continue on. Like, so you learn the culture aspects. What else do you think is important to learn? Like if you were entering the hardcore scene, what else do you need to understand when it comes to enjoying these shows?
Culture, it's a big one.
Okay.
You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to have like a fucking doctorate or PhD in hardcore or punk, but at least know enough to know what you're getting into. Like you can't fully appreciate something if you don't know enough about it. Is just my suggestion.
Or what do you think? Like the person should just learn like the basics. Like where should they go?
I mean, just do your homework. Like if you like what you hear currently, look at all those bands that influence everybody else. You know, listen to older bands. You know, I'm not going to give you a list of all of them, but you don't have to like all of them. But at least find the select few that you do like, and just go from there and branch out, and then learn about these bands. You know, learn a little history.
Yeah,
it doesn't kill you.
And so now remember, we're talking about the different waves that were going on. So now we're at a phase where the hardcore scene is really popular. Are you seeing like What do you think to be like the next wave? Like, do you think it's possible to predict that, or just like, are you seeing certain changes? Are like, hey, this is kind of changing from where it first started from?
So I've actually been thinking about that recently. So my thing is just mainly trends come and go.
Yeah.
And that's going to be in every single facet of culture, that no matter what you're into. I've seen a lot of trends come and go. Being involved in like this scene in this scene. So people are going to come and are gonna follow trends up to a certain point, or not follow trends at all. You can't necessarily predict what's gonna happen, but hardcore has become commercialized a little bit. I'm not super down with all the aspects of it, but I can't also knock that it was gonna bolster into this like down the road. But I will say that the attitudes for DIY and keeping it less commercialized is something I do strongly still agree with. Like, yeah, you do see people have sponsorships now, or like getting like commissions from like PVR or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, getting sponsored by like instrument companies or whatever. That's cool. PVR, I'm not so much. But, you know, if you want to get your bag. But obviously don't lose sight of what you were doing for this community in the first place. Just in general. Like, don't allow the commercialism to consume you.
No, that's very possible. And again, when certain sponsorships make sense, I mean, it's go for like, if it's an instrument that you swear by, it makes sense. Like, hey, they want to pay you, why not? Compared to where it's like a completely different company that has nothing to do with your niche, jumping in is kind of like, okay, this is very different.
Yeah, it's culture vultures. You got to be very careful, culture vultures, because people will just look to make a quick buck and they won't care anything about what they're looking to get into. I've seen it happen.
And so, what do you think are like the changes here locally? Like, what do you think what's coming up next, or what have you been seeing change on a local level?
Now that you mention it, so let's backtrack a little bit. So, you know, being a part of this for a while and kind of seeing like the same people come out for like years when I was like involved in the scene, it kind of like demoralized me a little bit to think like, oh, well, where's the growth? And then when we would see new people, they wouldn't show up after a while. Why? Because we were all cliquey, and I'm guilty of that too. But I always try to be nice to everybody, but obviously it's not possible when like other people have their preconceived like notions about something, or they just have their friend group they want to sleep with, which is fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I really do. But there was no growth for a while. So I was like, you know what, man? I'm still going to stick it out, but I just want to see more growth. And once shutdown happened, when I had attended my first fest, which is called Life and Death Brigade, I saw like a small community like Louisville, Kentucky, get from something very small to be considered a flyover state to where they boosted up to that point now, and then ended up getting bigger later on. So seeing that and taking some of that home with me, I was like, I want to implement that into this scene and see what I can do. And then shutdown happened a couple weeks later, and then everyone was not able to see each other for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then when shows started popping up again, I just said, I was like, fuck FOMO. I'm going to go to every single thing I went to. First show I ever went back to was the Tsunami, Gulch, Drain, Sabalba, Scowl, and My Overrise show that happened in a parking lot, where there was like fireworks being shot up during Gulch's set. And it was like 1,500 people paying $5 to see a show in a parking lot. Crazy.
No, yes. I kind of imagine like how much effort it took to manage a crowd like that big, and then to make sure everybody's paying, and just 1,500 people. I mean, that's...
I don't know. Well, they managed it pretty well. They some of those people in those bands did have a print shop, so they basically just said, we're going to do a merch shop for every single band playing. Buy it here, buy your tickets here.
Okay.
Easy peasy. Everyone made bank.
Oh yeah, sometimes like to me it sounds like very exhausting. But again, if you have a team of people, it's much easier to handle compared to like being by yourself. I'm just like, wow, like it's crazy. Like,
yeah, I will say shout out the Bay one time for that, because that was really cool, and I definitely want to go to California again soon to experience another show. But yeah, you know, just seeing that and kind of just networking with people kind of like was the thing that kind of got me interested to contribute more. And then after that, you know, I was just waiting for like, when are shows going to happen in my local scene again?
Yeah.
It wasn't until my friend Danny booked Liberty and Justice from Houston. It was going to be at Ridgefield, but then Ridgefield closed the doors indefinitely, and then 707 opened a little bit afterwards. And yeah, the show here. Once I came back, I saw my friends here, and then I saw like a bunch of people I'd never seen before, and I'm like, I don't know, like about 70-80% of the crowd. Who are these people?
Yeah, they just came out of nowhere.
And it was anxiety inducing, but I also was like, that's cool.
Mhm.
What the fuck? So then I was just like looking at it, and I just kept seeing more people come out. I was like 100 some like people showed up, and I was like, whoa, what? Where are these people coming from? And yeah, I was just seeing that like over time, and I was like, cool. So, shows that happen here and there. It wasn't like super like often that they would happen around that time that shows started opening up again, but it was cool. It
Yeah.
was really, really cool.
And so like, so then we're talking about like the peak. I think right now is like it's huge peak because this genre is able to support like 4 different promoters compared to other genres.
Yeah.
And then we're mentioning like I guess going back to the next part, like where do you think things are gonna be hitting now? Like, what's next?
So going back to what I was saying, yeah, I did see like a big peak of people just coming in and just kind of like,
Yeah, people were just tired of being locked up.
Yeah, so they just came and just found out of here. Half of those people left, revolving door. I've been seeing that over time, and so have my friends. But those people that stuck around, they started bands. They started coming out and dancing hard for bands.
Yeah.
They started like, figuring stuff out. Some of them started booking like later on down the road. So it was cool. And that's when I started booking myself. Like once I started seeing the potential here, and I was just like, oh, well, I've had this idea for years. Let me try it now.
Yeah.
And I asked advice from some of my friends. They gave me advice. I asked advice from other people that I knew. They gave me advice, and I kind of just bit the bullet like in 2022. First show I ever booked was Beyond Reach and some local acts here. That was around the time Roe versus Wade was overturned, so I ended up making it a benefit show.
Oh yeah. True.
So I did that. I paid Beyond Reach, paid one other band, and then the rest were like, keep our cut. It's fine, just donate it. So I ended up donating to some 2 local abortion funds here. I can't remember the name right now, but I donated like a good chunk of what I had left over after taking care of expenses, and then just went from there. And yeah, it was cool. I had people suggest me to do that because I wasn't sure how I was going to do for this show because it was a very volatile like time when that happened. And obviously we're still experiencing that residual effect up until this point. So I figured it's the least I could do.
Yeah. So you started doing the shows. How did you like start snowballing to like how you are right now? Because I mean, right now you're a very noticeable name when it comes to your band and all stuff. How did you go from like just starting off to like to this point right now?
So yeah, that's when I was like noticing like a lot of people coming out. I did my first show was supposed to be a band called Future Shock, and then Glaire was supposed to like hop on that and like a bunch of other local acts, but that didn't happen because a couple bands dropped, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I just dropped that, and that's when I did the Beyond Reach show. After that, I was just like, okay, let me do another one soon. So next one I did was. Me and my friends ended up booking my friends in Soledad and Dysmorphia because my friend Robert plays in those bands, and my friend Esteban was the one that told me, I want to bring these bands down, like, let's do it. I'm like, sure, we'll do it. And we're about another band from Arizona called Murder Rate, Rest in Peace. And we had a ton of people show up. I was just like, whoa, that's just crazy. And that's when SK debuted, actually.
Yeah.
When they had their original lineup. So it was really cool. And then we had Rum Walker and Worst Behavior play too. So it was a pretty cool show. Like, it was crazy. I was not expecting that many people to show up, and I was like, that's wild. So we were able to pay out the bands pretty well. And we had enough left over to kind of just split between us to kind of just like, I guess, go for the next show after that and just go from there.
It's a funny story. When you mentioned SK's debut, that person who I was working with at that time. This is when I was trying to I guess we started becoming promoters around the same time, 2022. I saw like one of their first couple of posts when they were like first beginning SK, whatever. They were doing like different posts, and it was just like videos.
Yeah.
And he was like, I remember I sending him stuff like, hey, like, I think this band has potential, and he was like, don't show me that fucking shit ever again.
Boo.
Yeah, and I'm just like, but like in my mind, like I guess I have like a knack for like realizing like the potential for certain bands. And even though like at that time it was like shitty audio quality, shitty video. Again, it's phone video.
Yeah.
I knew that SKA had something like very special going on. And so I told him like, I don't know, like these guys I think they're gonna blow up. And sure enough, he ended up wrong. And I told him like, hey, like That's why I hate when people look down upon others just because like they don't have like the right equipment or the right sound right now. I'm like that's stuff that can be solved easily. Like if it's sound quality, that can be solved down the line with a little bit more better equipment. But like that eagerness, that potential, that passion, it's always there and you can always see it. And I don't know, like I'm just kind of like I'm glad they really blew up because I'm like, you know what?
They deserved it.
They deserved it. And this is something where like again, it probably has an ego part where I'm like, hey, I'm right, you're wrong. But it's just like when people are passionate about stuff, like you can just see it. And it's something I discovered that, like, again, that's part of the reason why I become a promoter, because even though some of these bands are small, you could kind of tell by their behavior, by like how they act with other bands, who's going to blow up and who's not. Like there's certain bands where they're not doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And some bands, you know, they're in it for the music and that's what they're going to do.
Most definitely. So yeah, just like I wanted to give people a shot and I just wanted to see what I could do and offer to the table to, you know, do my part to like entice bands to want to come through here. So
And I think it's very important that you're doing that because again, some people just need a chance. That's all they need.
Yeah.
They have the passion, they have everything, but like sometimes people get looked over just because they're small. And the fact that you're giving people the opportunity, and again, it's the same thing with the podcast where a bass spinner, like he was always saying like, hey, if you are a small band, go on the Joe Martin show because he's gonna help you out, give you that little lift you need, like as a starting band. He's gonna give it to you and you're gonna grow. And that's the same thing. I love doing that where sometimes people just need the opportunity to say, hey, do it. And people do it and they take off.
yeah, like it's not even like a big thing. Like you should just do the bare minimum to like put on for people that you know are gonna have like success. It's you can see potential. That's what I did for SKA. That's what we did for Inconvenient Truth also, and like a bunch of other bands that either are existing right now or no longer existing. Like we gave them chances. You know, we gotta put on for everybody that we can. Obviously, there's gonna be distinctions where we kind of have to draw the line depending on what it is. For like.
That's the tough. I think that's the tough part of being a promoter. When once like money gets involved, you kind of have to choose bands that are for sure going to bring in people because maybe the headliner they have a certain guarantee, and you have to reach that aspect. And then other shows you can be a little bit more risky and give other bands a chance.
For sure, and it's not easy. It's not an easy job to kind of like cure a lineup. Cure a lineup. It's really, really hard. Sometimes, like if someone's not available, you just kind of have to bite the bullet and be like, okay, hey, you know, let's try this one. Yeah, obviously, there was a time where I was getting hit up way too much with like a lot of bands that I wasn't even familiar with or bands that didn't have music out. I'm like, I can't take a chance on you because I can't trust it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's why like for me, like the rule I had, like if you had music out at the very least, or at least are playing live shows consistently, I'll give you the chance.
For sure. So yeah, the thing I've noticed, like when I started booking, like there was just a peak and then, you know, revolving door and then a more peak and then, you know, it was just like in waves. And we're still seeing that now, but we're seeing a specific set of kids like still coming out to shows. They're inviting their friends and more people are getting into it and just all of that nature. Like, although we're at kind of a low point we were at a low point at some point, we're just going to ride out the wave until we see like the growth, and we're still seeing the growth like gradually come back while we still have all these kids that are still consistently coming out to shows or as often as they can. They're going to be here. I know some of these kids are going to start growing up and, you know, graduating and going to other places. So we're taking what we can at this time to kind of just, you know, influence the kids that are still going to be around here for a bit longer before they have to, you know, grow up and do more things with their personal life besides, you know, being involved in this community. We got to make sure that we foster like more kids to want to participate.
So what do you think is what's the next evolution right now? Like, what do you think? What's the next step for the hardcore scene?
More bands. That's all I can really say. More bands. We have enough promoters as it is.
Yeah.
We need more bands.
How do you do that? Like, is it just encouraging kids to go to shows, and how do you encourage people to like? Again, it's one thing encourage them to go to shows. It's a whole different thing to actually invest and become part of a band. How do you do that?
It's really tricky because, you know, equipment's not cheap.
No, yeah.
But there's ways around it if you're really dedicated. I know this not from personal experience, but I just know people have like said like, oh well, you know, I bought from this site when I was just making like fast food money, blah 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 blah. Oh, I've just scoured Facebook Marketplace even for like a really like basic guitar. Go from there. And yeah, you don't have to have the nicest equipment as long as it works and you can figure something out. I think you should be straight, but my thing is just just encourage kids to come to shows if they like what they see. I'll be like, hey, You want to contribute more? Start a band. If it sucks, it's fine. You'll get better. It's not the end of the world. Like, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
But just know what you're doing. Like, when you're setting yourself up for that commitment, like, just like be all in. Don't waver. Just be all in.
Yeah, being in a band, it's not the thing to be doing. Like, yeah, maybe not, because again, it's not just you. It's 3, 4, 5 other people part of this group. So like, you have to be confident in what you're doing.
Exactly. So yeah, just start more bands. Like, although I may be booking right now, I am going to start a band eventually. Don't know when that's gonna happen, but wink, wink.
How do you feel about that? Because I mean, you're getting to experience different parts of the scene. You've been in the body before. Now you're a promoter. Now you want to be in a band. How do you how do you think it's going to change your experience as a promoter? Because now you're getting to get to be part of it. Now you're getting to be a band. Do you think it's going to affect you as a promoter or not?
So it won't affect me as a promoter, no, because I'll be able to divvy up my time. But I'm going to see the side of like being in a band where you're going to be asked constantly to play.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to pick and choose who you want to go with for promoters. And obviously, you're going to have band dynamics too. You're going to be, sharing a space with other people that are sharing your vision. You kind of have to maneuver everything that can happen, from like arguments, falling outs, playing consistently, recording music, putting out music. Heck, if you even like get enough of a repertoire here in your local scene, oh, you want to branch out? What do you want to do next?
Yeah, I want to hear your opinions. Like, once, like in a couple of years, I guess, once that band stuff starts happening, I want to hear like your opinions of how maybe they're still the same or different after you experience being in a band. So again, you get to appreciate a show differently. Like, again, just being a person going to a show and then becoming a promoter, you get to experience the show very, very differently under a different set of eyes compared to just being a body.
Yeah.
And so like, I wonder how your experience to be being part of a band, being a promoter, and then also being someone who's attended shows, how your experiences change, how you view shows, or how you start viewing that stuff then.
Yeah, I feel like my perspective will change a little bit, but it won't be by a whole lot because I've already been in the position of having eyes on me as a promoter. So,
but I just wonder like how that perspective is going to change.
Yeah,
that's what I'm very curious about.
It's a little nerve-wracking. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
What made you actually want to become a part of the band? Because again, that's another pivot into the scene.
So my thing was like, okay, I was a body for a good amount of years, right? And then I started promoting, and I've been promoting for almost 3 years at this point. So my thing is just mainly, okay, what else can I do? There's a lot of bands here. Some of them are not that great, and they'll get better, sure. A lot of these bands end up not even getting out of unfortunately, the trend of Instagram page and just having something in your bio but never doing anything with it.
Yeah, I see something just where they don't even post anything, and then you start off like, whatever happened to this?
It's rough. It's rough.
I think like in computer software, I think it's called like vaporware, where like people talk about like, oh, we're developing this, like it just never happens.
Right. It's just a rough trend to see right now. I was like, do something with that, please. Like, even if it sucks, like, please do it, But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just like, I see so many trends of people being into like, the stuff I was into a long time ago. I'm seeing kids like start like shopping for like deathcore and like old metalcore tees. Awesome. Cool. Sometimes culture does come back in a sense. But my thing is like, I want to have the hardcore scene still bloom, while me and my friends and everybody else that's involved is putting in that work. We want to get kids more interested in wanting to start more bands, because the ones that are bearing the flag right now, for example, Worst Behavior, False Front, Reinforced when they do play, SK, Sleocrasa, and Blood Clot, and excuse me. And heck, I'll even throw Mankind into the mix because they're like death metal inspired hardcore. And then like other bands that play too, like that are like in the mix, many to name, but yeah, just like a few examples that come to mind. Like those are the bands that are like, oh well, they have some inkling to like being being an aspect of hardcore. So what's next? What other bands are going to come from that? So I figured, all right, let me just kind of just bite the bullet and just stop like putting it to the side and just do it, and just maybe inspire maybe one kid or maybe 2 kids to be like, hey, this person's band is awesome. Maybe I want to do that too.
Oh, what are you aiming for? What instrument?
I'm a vocalist.
So how do you feel about that? I mean,
it's nerve-wracking. as hell, because I've never been behind a mic before. I've done guest spots before, but I've never done a mic. I've never been behind a mic, like saying my own words.
Yeah. So like you're really throwing yourself out there. I like that about you. The fact that no matter how nerve wracking or how scary it can be, you're doing it. I like that. I like that about people. I don't like people who, again, not to put them down, but like people. I like people who take risks and are able to put themselves out of their comfort zone.
I have not always been a risk taker. I'll be real with you, but over time, I've just kind of realized being in this like subculture and community and like developing myself as a person all the time. I just kind of realized like sometimes you got to do things.
What was the pivotal moment when you started saying, "Hey," and just in life in general, where you started saying, "You know what? It's time to take risks. We're no longer going to be playing it safe. We're not going to be shy no more. We're just going to start doing it." And
probably when I started graduating high school.
Okay.
Like, okay, what am I going to do like outside of that? Like, I need to grow up. What am I going to do? Okay, I need to start taking risk whether I like it or not. Like, you know, just doing anything, really, just anything. Yeah. Whether it was traveling, trying something new. For example, going vegan. That was a big change for me.
How was that? Like, what made you decide on, like, you know what, I'm going to become vegan?
For me, it was just mainly like more so health reasons, and then a little bit for the animals. Like that came later on. But I was listening to bands like freaking Earth Crisis and Earth Crisis, like bands from like the UK, like Archangel or Repentance. Like they were talking about veganism, and I was like, oh, cool, that's awesome. So, and then bands like Safe and Sound, like I saw Safe and Sound like in 2016, and they gave me like a coupon for free roast sausage. I was like, cool. I let it expire because I didn't know where to find that.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, how easy or difficult is that? Because I mean, we're in the Valley, and just in Texas in general, barbecue culture is very important. It's very ingrained in us. How do you like deal with that? Like, just in general.
So main thing for me is like when I was starting to become vegan, I watched those like documentaries that show you in elementary about like where your food comes from, and it never clicked for me until like way later.
Yeah.
And then I had a chemistry teacher make us change our diet for like a week to teach us about molecular structure, just for a lesson. And then like I kind of felt great, and I just kept it up for a month. Wasn't committed, broke. Then I just like, oh, okay, whatever. I started having some health problems down the road, so I just said, fuck it, I'm gonna try again. So I tried doing it cold turkey, couldn't do it. Went vegetarian for a month, and then mid-April of 2017, I said, yeah, I can do this. Made a couple mistakes here and there, but I've been gonna be vegan for 8 years this coming April. So it's been very interesting. But around the time that I became vegan, there was some options, but not a whole lot. So
yeah.
I'd have to be like secret menuing a lot of things.
What would you do? Like, how would you navigate, I guess, like eating out or just eating at home?
Well, eating at home was probably the biggest proponent that I do a lot. My mom had to kind of learn how to like, maneuver with me too, because she'd be the one buying groceries all the time. And then my thing was like, eating out, like, okay, what can I get? Like a burger, but this way, or can I just get some veggies, or can I just get some fries? Yeah. I was just like, just doing what I could to kind of just like, maneuver a menu, and then just ask like, what's it made out of? What do you use to make it? Yeah.
What preference do you have right now, like towards like, I guess, meat alternatives? Because I know there's different options right now. Like there's so many to go with.
For sure. I think Beyond Meat's pretty cool.
Beyond Meats. What makes it like your favorites?
I don't know. It's just for me, like it just has it has a weird aftertaste, but they've changed the formula a few times over the years. So it's probably my preferred one. Impossible is pretty cool too.
Yeah, because I know there's also like sometimes like when we're talking about chicken wings that they make them out of like cauliflower.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that there's also some made of tofu or
soy.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Or seitan.
Yeah. So how does that work? Like, what makes them different? Like, and what made you prefer, I guess, cauliflower?
Well, I tried cauliflower only because it was seasoned correctly. And
what do you mean by that?
So, like, when you had replied to my story, like, not that long ago, when I had gotten some wings from my job, with my job, for cauliflower wings, you have to batter them a certain way just to make sure that you are seasoning them correctly and everything. It's a process, just like how you would make regular chicken wings, Make sure they're crisp to a certain point, sauced really well, seasoned really well, just so everything sticks and the flavor is there. But cauliflower one, I've tried it a handful of times, and it's not my preferred like method, but I'm just like, you know what? Not bad. You can make it work.
But what makes it better than soy, like in your opinion, like in your personal taste?
Well, that one that I had was pretty good, but I'm usually getting like the soy alternatives either ways because it just reminds me of the texture of a chicken wing anyways. And I'll be real with you, some vegans like eating like mostly the meat alternatives because they miss the texture and feel.
Yeah,
of
because I was
eating
gonna
a
say like
burger.
there's certain cuisines that are completely vegan or vegetarian, like Indian food, where
Yeah.
they're not trying to replicate meat. Like they don't want to be meat. They're just getting all these different dishes and then making their own stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, I do indulge in meat alternatives a whole ton because I miss the texture of eating like ground beef or like chicken or like a burger.
Is there certain cuisines that like you're more in leaning towards because it's easier to be vegan?
Yeah, actually. So I like tofu a lot.
But which cuisines, like when it comes to like ethnicity, are easier for you to like make vegan compared to others? Because I would imagine certain like ethnicities, like meat is very important, while in others it's not as important.
So making tacos is pretty easy for me.
Okay.
Making tofu with like just like some white rice and some protein, pretty good. Let's see what else. Burgers are pretty easy now that there's like Beyond Meat and like all these other burgers.
There's also like black bean burgers. Have you tasted those?
I've tested those.
Are they good or no? Because I always look at them, I'm like, I'm not too sure.
Hit or miss, but if you find the right one, very good.
Very good.
If you want to add like extra condiments to make it taste a little bit better, by all means do so.
So what would you say is like the different, I guess, flavor profile between a black bean burger versus, I guess, Impossible meat or whatever?
So Impossible Meat's already seasoned. You can season a little bit if you like, but with anything that's like a veggie burger, you're gonna taste like all the different textures and all the different like components that make that patty. So it's good, but you got to be very careful on which ones you choose because some of them are not that great texture wise. And some of them, they taste okay, but you gotta be very careful.
And so like when it comes to like local restaurants, which ones do you recommend people try out? Like if they like maybe they're not committed to veganism, but like they want to try it, what would you recommend?
So like I told you in private, like before we even like made an appointment to do this interview, I don't go out a whole lot, but I started changing that recently. But if I had to recommend at least like 3 restaurants, I'm a big proponent of like Chinese food. I love Japanese or Chinese cuisine. If you are interested in trying something vegetarian or vegan, go to Hop Tongue in McAllen. So it has a really good vegetarian menu, and they have tofu. You can substitute tofu for almost any dish there. They have really good soups too.
No, I think I went there once and I tried like their roasted duck, and I didn't think I didn't know they're gonna have the entire duck. There's like the head there, the legs too. I'm like, whoa. They really
it's like I see the web foot.
like when you order chicken, you think like, oh, chicken breast and all that stuff, like chicken legs. Like you're just like those funny, but then you like the claws there. I'm like, oh shit, like they really mean everything. And I mean, it's good. Like it's every part's serving a purpose, so it's not wasted.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. But yeah, Hop Tongue's one for sure.
Hop Tongue, okay.
Chopsticks in McAllen or Edinburgh is good too. They have tofu also, so you can pretty much substitute that for any dish.
Yeah, because the only vegetarian or vegan restaurant I ever saw was the one next to Gremlin, which is the Maria something.
Miracruz is another one
Yeah.
I'd recommend 100%. Really good breakfast brunch spot.
What do they offer like when it comes to like breakfast? Because I could imagine it's not just salads and cereals. So I'm pretty sure there's other stuff involved.
So there's oatmeal, there's pancakes, waffles. They have omelets.
Have you tried soy chorizo?
Yes.
Does it taste like chorizo?
Great. My favorite.
Because sometimes I get curious, like, does it really taste close or? Because I'm pretty sure like a lot of the flavor profile is just the spices that make chorizo.
Exactly. Yeah. No. So with chorizo, it's more heavy because it's more greasy. Soy chorizo, it's a little lighter.
Oh, that's perfect then. Yeah, because
I'd recommend it.
Oh yeah, that's like one like I guess like greasier foods. That's probably something I would want to replace because I do want to become healthier. I mean, again, when it comes to life, you can't be taken for granted, and again, health issues are a very important thing.
100%.
And that's what I would recommend. Like the youth. This is like an idea I had, but I'm not sure if I would do it because I'm not sure it would work out. But like having health screenings, like have a show going on, but also have a health screening where the youth can like check out any issues that are going on. Because again, access to healthcare is very important. But also, like, I'm not sure, like, if the team would be like, yeah, let's do this. Let's take our blood pressure. That's the issue I'm having right now.
I don't know about all that. But
because I would want people to be aware of, like, again, that Valley has an obesity issue. I mean,
sure.
I'm part of that. And I'm just like, man, like, I wish the youth would also, like, make sure to take care of themselves because, again, you never know what might happen down the line. We have a lot of stuff that runs in our families, diabetes, high blood pressure, all that stuff is very important. The
Mhm.
fact that you're taking care of yourself, I mean, that's perfect. I want the youth to say, like, hey, you know what? This is what's going to happen to you if you don't take care of yourself. Let's do it right now. It's easier when you're younger. You have more time.
Correct.
You have more energy. Once you get older, you have a job. Sometimes people just do the job. They get to home. They're tired by the time they get home. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it. You gotta wake up for the next morning. That's it.
Yep.
Like that's something I'm also interested in. Like I'm not sure like how that would work, but I would want like the youth to be taking care of their health.
So I like that idea, but I wouldn't say like, I don't know, like have like doctors set up in Ven and be like, yeah, take your blood pressure here while you're go moshing for like a band.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
You-
that actually would be a bad idea.
Yeah, but I would say maybe have like somebody like a health like care worker like offer flyers for like low cost like healthcare coverage.
Yeah.
Would be a good idea, I would say.
No, yeah, okay, that would be a better alternative. Yeah, because then if you're moshing, you're fully like exercising.
People are gonna be like, come back in a
Come back.
while to do the blood pressure.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
are you nervous? It's the adrenaline.
The adrenaline,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, but stuff like that, it's something that I've been thinking about just because like I've been having my own issues. It's just high blood pressure right now.
For sure.
But still, like it's something that I'm concerned about because again, it affects everybody. And I've been talking to my doctor quite a bit, and diabetes is already everybody knows about diabetes, but another big issue that she's seen here in the valley and just around the U.S. entirely is fatty liver.
Oh,
So some people think it's just alcohol, but no. Now there's a rising case of non-alcoholic fatty liver, and basically a cause of it is like a lot of like carb consumption and a bunch of other stuff. Like there's different things that contribute to it, and it's the amount of sugar we have, the amount of salt, like all of this stuff. It's very like it takes a toll on our body, and our liver is the one organ that actually regenerates itself. One of the
Interesting.
few.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. It's the only organ that like really like, but if you abuse it too much, that's it. And like I want the youth to know, like, hey, there's like three general stages. The first stage is you're healthy. Second stage, when you're like borderline, you still have the opportunity to like change your diet and go back to like a healthier liver. But once you start crossing to that third level, that's something called sclerosis or something like that. I can't pronounce the word right.
Cirrhosis?
Yeah, yeah. And once you start having that, like, they start putting you on a list of like looking for organ donors, and the
Yeah.
chances of you getting an organ, it's very
It's
tough.
very slim, yeah.
You're gonna be on a long list, and so you're basically at that point. There's no reversal.
Yeah.
It's death. It's a death sentence. And so that stuff. It's again, yes, diabetes is a big one, but like this is something that people need to be aware of. And again, that's why I'm trying to like change my diets because I'm like, you know what? How much time do we have in this life? We gotta take care of ourselves.
100%.
And so that's why like it became a concern for me. I'm like, you know what? I like it some people in the youth, and I'm like, you know what? You guys need to be aware of this stuff.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely. So yeah, I guess like maybe having
Flyers.
flyers for like, access to healthcare, like what it's low cost. Cause I have private healthcare right now.
Yeah, same.
And I was referred through by an aunt of mine to be like, hey, well, you can hit this person up and they'll be able to find a plan for you that works best and go from there. I only
Yeah,
pay.
because that's very important. Like the way I see it, like I see people struggling for healthcare, like it's expensive. And if you're not under the certain like financial connection, this is what I really hate. Where sometimes there's families where they don't make a low enough amount where they can't receive like government help, but
Yeah.
they make too much. They make too much to get government help, but they don't make enough to be buying like private healthcare. There's like that middle area, and I hate that. Like, my family's gone through it. Luckily, right now we have health insurance, but I see the struggle that goes on.
No, most definitely. And then there's also the stereotype and the stigma with people being like, oh, well, I only go to the doctor when I'm like dying.
Yeah, that's also a thing my family would like go through. Like my grandparents were, you only go, and again, there's something called white coat syndrome, I think.
Oh,
where-
yeah.
Where so for the people who don't know, like some people are so afraid of doctors that their blood pressure, like they get nervous around doctors or a medical setting, and so like if you're going to a doctor to treat your blood pressure, it's going to be worse because you're nervous already, and that happens to me.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why is because again, it's the generational trauma where my grandma would only go to the doctor when things were like really bad, and so like you start associating the worst possible outcomes once you go to the doctor, as opposed to preventative care where you're really taking care of yourself before it gets to that point.
Yeah.
And so like that stuff needs to change. It also ties in with the TikTok stuff where people are going to red notes, and there's been a lot of like memes and like conversations going on between the Chinese and Americans where they thought it was government propaganda that Americans have to pay for ambulances. And people are saying like, no, like we have to pay for ambulances. They're like, what? And they're seeing like how like cheap the insurance in China is. Like there's like free coverage, but there's also private options, but they're still like much cheaper than what we get here. And so all that stuff just come in combination. It's kind of like damn, like we got to take care. Like again, taking care of part of the taking care of community is is making sure your health is all right.
Yeah.
And it's also important because again, the majority of the scene is more male. That's the fact. And the thing is, like, more often than not, like, there's the machismo part of our culture where people don't want to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
I've seen it with my uncle. My grandpa was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, my uncles, they don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to get checkups because there's always like, oh, well, they're going to finger you because, how they check for cancer. I mean, there's all the stereotypes. And so I'm just kind of like, damn, like, all of this needs to change. And if I could, like, save one life, like, again, kind of like the same thing, getting someone involved, it would be very important or very meaningful to get involved with that stuff.
No,
I know it's a very heavy topic and it has nothing to do with music, but it does in terms of
it does play
taking care of your music scene. Because there's people who I know have passed away that they were taking care of themselves. For better or worse, sometimes it's out of their hands, but like, you gotta do what you can.
For sure. Yeah, it does tie into it a little bit because, you can exhaust yourself physically if you're contributing so much, but also not keeping tabs on yourself as well.
Yeah. And it does tie in because there's certain drummers I know that they don't hydrate. And so like by the time they finish their performance, they're like passing out. And I'm just like, no, you guys gotta take care of yourself. Like even if you're young, you think you're invincible. Once you hit your mid-20s, late 20s, that's when like, oh no, you're not invincible. You're not as strong as you were once you were in your teens. And so you really got to take care of yourself.
Most def. And I'll be transparent like with you because I have a chronic condition that's lifelong. I have ulcerative colitis. I got diagnosed with that. It's going to be...
What is that?
5 years in this coming March.
What is that?
April, sorry. So basically what it is, it's just inflammation along the intestinal lining of my either small intestine or my large intestine.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically just means that I'm going to have a lot of inflammation. So bowel movements are going to be really tough to experience because I'm going to have a lot of discomfort and pain in my abdominal area. And I'm going to have some rectal bleeding, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to be all messed up with like being backed up a whole lot.
What are the treatments for that kind of stuff?
So when I got diagnosed with it fully, it's because I had pulled something here like a couple years ago at a show. And I managed to get to a doctor and take like an oral treatment and that fixed it. And I was fine. After that, I pulled it again. And then that's when it flared up my condition like fully to be like full in effect.
So did it happen because you pulled something or was it already like happening like genetically?
So it runs in my family.
Okay.
But if I didn't get it then, I would have gotten it way later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so vegan food helps you with that, right?
Yeah, it helps curb the symptoms up to a certain point, but obviously I'd be having a way worse time if I was still eating the way I was like almost 8 years ago. But anyways, so yeah, there are treatments for that. You can do either medication to just regulate your digestive system and repair your intestinal lining by steroids, or you can have IV infusions, you can have injections, you can have surgery. There's multitude of treatments.
So there's like cures for it, right? Or
not cures,
just treatments.
Just treatments to keep it at bay so you can live a comfortable life because you can't cure it unless you cut out some of your colon.
Oh, okay.
And even then, that's not a for sure 100% cure because it could come back.
Yeah, that's effective on life.
Yeah, so I've been diagnosed with that for like 5 years. The first 2 to 3 years were tough because I was in a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain, and I was the same way. Like how you were saying about your family, I didn't want to go to the doctor. I kind of just toughed it out until I couldn't take it anymore. And that's when I went to specialists. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
By the time I was getting a colonoscopy done at the age of 22.
Yeah.
22, mind you. I was like, okay, never done this before. This is usually for older patients anyways, but fuck it, we'll see how it happens.
Yeah, that's what I felt when I was visiting the doctor where like, again, the high blood pressure issues, it's usually like for older adults and something like that. When I'm like elderly, I'm like, damn, like you really it really makes you want to change your life because I mean, what else are you going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did that. They pulled me aside in the room and read me the results. I had a relief, but I was just so like distraught and I cried about it. And I was like, okay, this is what it is. and this is and this is how I'm gonna have to take it moving forward.
And I think it's important that people figure out what's wrong with them, because again, part of the anxiety you have is not knowing what's going on.
Exactly.
Once you find out, I mean, it sucks that it's happening, but at least you know what's going on, what you can do about it. That's what I recommend people do, because you never know like what you might have going on with your body. I want young people to know, like, sometimes you get stuff in your 20s and it just sucks.
Exactly. So it's best to know, even if the news is not the best.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was dealing with that, and then I was on multiple treatments, lots of medications, lots of steroids. It did mess up my body a little bit, but then after I weaned off on it, I started feeling a little bit better. So right now what I'm doing is IV infusions every other month, where they're just like injecting a medicine in my body that slows all my bodily functions. So it also slows the regeneration of the intestinal lining being bad. So as of right now, the treatment's working. And although I'm not having any sort of discomfort, rectal bleeding, every so often it does happen. Not the rectal bleeding, but just the discomfort. It's super rare now. But it does slow down my healing too, so I have to be very careful on things I do. So since I'm still putting my dumb ass in harm's way here, I need to kind of chill sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But I don't care. I still do it. I mean, I stage dove like at the Rich show yesterday, and it kind of hurt my wrist a little bit, but I'm good now.
No, yeah. I mean, that's at the end of the life, you still gotta enjoy it, no matter how bad it is.
Exactly.
That's always the way I always see in life, because there's been some of like my older high school friends, like I wouldn't say they were nihilists, but like they had such a negative view on life.
Sure.
And look, I understand sometimes people have shitty lives. Like I know some of them had like very like tough upbringings, but like so did I. We had similar background experiences, and it shouldn't stop you from enjoying life and having a positive outlook. Because again, no matter what happens, your mentality is, at the end of the day, that's what's gonna matter the most. Like if you have a positive outlook or negative outlook, that's what's gonna keep you going. And this is something I would encourage people to do, but like take a very careful look at your friends. I'm not saying like cut off everybody, but like be sure to be very careful on who you surround yourself with, because people like to think that you're completely independent of everything around you, but no, like your friends have an influence on you, your family has an influence on you. If there's certain people who are constantly bringing you down or making you feel bad about being yourself and all stuff, like you gotta let them go. No matter how long you've been friends with these people, they gotta go. And sometimes it is just a sign of growth, where maybe at one point you had similar interests, you had everything together, but then people grow apart. It just happens.
Yeah.
And so just make sure you take care of yourself mentally, physically, everything.
It's true. You're not wrong. I've had that experience already, like just in general in my life, and then being a part of the scene is no different than just general life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to let people go. Sometimes you have to kind of dissociate yourself from people. It's not the best thing in the world. It's not the best feeling in the world, but sometimes it is necessary.
No, yeah, it is. Especially sucks. Like again, I'm from a small town, so like everybody's family knows each other, and so like it's very tough where some of your friends' family, like you've been with them for a long time, and so like they see you as like part of their family, and you're no longer friends, and then you see them at the store. It's kind of like, it is what it is.
For sure. But
yeah. But again, I'm glad you opened up, because again, it's very important that people realize that stuff. I mean, for me, it was just blood pressure, the liver thing, just making sure like I'm able to like eat healthier. So I might try the vegan stuff just for a little bit, just to see, okay, you know what? Because I keep hearing stuff about red meat, but sometimes I'm like, is it really red meat, or is there people lying about like their other stuff? Because when studies go on, sometimes people say like, oh, well, I'm taking care of myself, but then they're not.
Yeah.
It's like when people say like they're on diets, and then like
it's fat diets.
You start seeing them. Yeah.
So I feel you. It's just like, I'm not gonna say it's entirely propaganda, but I'm just gonna tell you like, yo, red meat's pretty bad.
No, sometimes it can be bad. Yeah,
it's pretty bad, but you gotta. I will say, at this point, I'm not trying to push veganism on anybody anymore, because at this point, anybody can do what they want. But I'm just gonna say, be mindful of the choices you do make. However,
I'm still gonna eat meat. I'm just.
Yeah,
because I know sometimes people show up like the slaughter videos. I'm like, okay, I don't want to know where my meat came from or how it was happened, but like, I'm still gonna eat it.
Exactly. So just be mindful of the choices you do. Moderation is a big key factor in like how you're going to uphold yourself when you have your relationship with food.
No, yeah, for me it's more just like I need more healthier stuff to it, like at least an alternative, as opposed to completely getting rid of something. Because again, some people do diets and like they completely want to get rid of like certain foods.
Yeah.
And it helps. It works for a while, but then like after a while, it comes back, and then it's.
It just really depends on how you how you manage like your lifestyle with like taking care of yourself with like consuming food. So It's not an easy thing. Sometimes people like that have gone vegan or vegetarian have developed eating disorders, unfortunately,
That one I didn't
because
know.
their relationship with food becomes very skewed. And some people have to break, unfortunately, because they have to take care of themselves. And hey,
Yeah.
that is completely valid. You know, I'm not going to judge you for it. But, you know, it's very tough. It's very fickle.
No,
Like,
yeah.
any diet you do or any lifestyle change you do, you have
Yeah,
to
people need to stop
moderate it.
thinking of diets as diets, just eating certain foods, but people need to consider it. It's a complete lifestyle change.
Exactly.
It's not just what you eat; it's everything.
How you do it.
Yeah, because again, for me, I think the whole weight issue started happening for me was again, it's the relationship with food. This is something people need to talk about because, again, when it comes to our economy here in the valley, a lot of the growth, which I really hate, is people's like, "Oh, the valley's growing." It is. I'm excited for that stuff. But a lot of it is fast food restaurants that are just popping out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not fast food, it's car washes. That's another topic. But
Yeah.
but again, it's a lot of the growth is us just eating out. And I hate that culture about the valley where if people want to go out, it's food related. It's never like, oh, let's go out to this place. Well, now that's kind of changing. But
Mm-hmm.
even now, like I'm from like the city next to me is also, there's been a lot of growth, but it's been a lot of fast food. People get excited because like, oh, there's a Taco Bell now, there's KFC, there's all this. I'm like, yes, it's growth, but it comes at the cost of the community, where people are having less options that are healthier.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
And so like for me, I think part of it is our culture where you think of like grandma's like, oh, here, have another plate.
Mm-hmm.
That's one aspect that I kind of don't like, and I hope it changes as the youth becomes more aware. For me, I think it was mostly like a security thing, because when I was growing up, my father was. Well, when I was a kid, he was good, but like once I started becoming a teenager, there was like some physical abuse involved. And so often when I would go to my grandma's, like the first thing she'd do, like, oh, let me take care of you. And like there was food involved, like, oh.
Yeah.
So like I started associating safety with food.
Yeah.
And so anytime I would suffer from anxiety or any of that stuff, like food would be the first thing, like it would become a comfort.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people to start noticing why you're addicted to certain vices, because more often than not, it's a psychological issue.
Yep.
People gotta solve that stuff. And for me, the way I view it is like, yes, you're your adult self right now, but there's also that small kid that was scared in the beginning when you were younger.
Mm-hmm.
That kid still exists within you.
Exactly.
You gotta learn how to take care of him, how to do the opposite. Like, so like if you're very weak, now you gotta be stronger and start making yourself feel more confident. So like that kid in you feels secure. Same thing with like the psychological stuff, where like you gotta start realizing where these issues stem from and start reversing them while you can, because again, there's a lot of generational trauma that we go through as Hispanics. And so like that stuff also needs to be solved. And yeah, like again, health has been like a thing that's been on my mind for quite a while now. And part of it is just the longevity.
Yeah.
Part of it is like knowing certain people in the scene are no longer with us. Like that freaks me out. Like anytime a young person passes away, or like someone my age, whether it be a car crash or health issues, I'm just kind of like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
it freaks me out, because again, I never knew I had anxiety until like 2 years ago. Like when we started like talking about like being diagnosed, there was this moment where I thought I was having a heart attack,
Okay.
and I started feeling like a lot of pressure on my chest, and I'm like, oh fuck, like is this it? Like is this the wrap?
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I started talking to my mom. She's like, oh no, like no, that's anxiety. Like I started having a panic attack. I don't know why. Like sometimes I overthink a lot. That's what's one main issue with me. Where yes, there's a whole philosophical thing when it comes to like deep thinking, but like, the downside is overthinking.
Yeah.
You start putting yourself into a panic, and so that's what happens to me. What happens? The worst part about me is that when I start overthinking, I start having these physical symptoms. It leads to a panic where like, oh my god, what if something's happened to me? And so it becomes a cycle.
Yeah.
So once I started realizing that I had anxiety, I'm like, okay, I need to start like alleviating what the stuff I have, because when you're in the scene, you're going to shows, you're a promoter, you have all these things. So it's about managing stress. You have your personal life, your work life. That's another thing I encourage people in the scene to become aware of or become mindful of. They have the experience with college, but once you're in work, I mean, it's a completely different thing. So manage stress, take care of yourself, just stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I know it's kind of venting, kind of crazy, but it's something I wish I was told when I was younger, because then I would have taken care of myself much sooner. And so I'm pretty sure other people in the scene, like they're going through the same thing as we are, where maybe their families aren't like super involved in healthcare or like taking care of themselves. So if they listen to us, again, we're considered like the role models of the scene. if they at least learn something from this, I mean, I hope that they take their health seriously, especially at a younger age when it's so much easier compared to later in life.
For sure, yeah. Since like we're just like some people that are like, you know, common faces in the scene, like if anything that they can take inspiration from what we're talking about, like in terms of like just taking yourself in general, taking care of yourself in general, whether it's just something physical or mental or what have you. Yeah, just definitely do that.
That is an aspect of the scene as well, where sometimes people go through the issues and learning how to handle that is very important.
Exactly. Yeah. And then another lifestyle change I did like while going vegan is I ended up becoming sober.
Okay.
Like or what we call straight edge in hardcore.
What is that? Because again, some people encourage it, some people don't. Like, what is the whole point of like straight edge? Where did that come from?
So for me, like I did indulge in drugs like at a young age. Like it wasn't something super hard. It was just like mainly like weed and alcohol and sometimes cigarettes. Never really stemmed anything out of that.
Sober, is it completely like everything like alcohol, cigarettes, and weed, or like what does it mean like to you like right now?
Sorry, I thought I was about to sneeze, but
go for it.
No, you're good. So the main aspect, because straight edge was like a movement that boistered in the mid to late 80s because of Minor Threat.
Oh, okay.
Ian Mackay was the one that coined the term straight edge. And it just boistered into this moment. Well, there's 3 X's, you know, each one stands for something different. The first X is no drugs.
Okay.
And then the second one's no alcohol, I believe. And then the third X is abstinence from sex. But no one really follows the third X. I'm going to be so real with you.
You're not becoming priest right now.
Yeah. So yeah, no substances or drugs of any kind. No alcohol is the second X. And then the third one's abstinence from sex. No one really follows the third X.
I guess the guy like could be like just to avoid like doing like certain stuff because again, you know.
Yeah.
In rock and roll culture, there's been bad stuff that goes on with sex. But
exactly. Yeah. So like there's many nuances and like what's the word I'm looking for, aspects of what straight edge means to somebody, because there's like different like proponents of it all, like, oh, it can just be edge because I don't like drinking or smoking or whatever. Oh, I'm edge because I don't also believe that medication and caffeine are also going to be lumped into that too. Yeah. So some people that are more like stricter on that compared to somebody that's more lax about it. For me, since I have to take medication for my condition,
there's no other option. Yeah.
There's no other option, you know.
And so what made you change on the whole alcohol, weed, and all that stuff?
So for me, like, I'm not sure if this is something that is like a common thought, like after a while, when you indulge in vices long enough, actually, you know what, scratch what I just said. When you indulge in vices long enough, you kind of start to realize like, oh, okay, I do this to get my mind off things.
Yeah.
Does this work after a while? Sure, doesn't. Sometimes you have to take breaks on it. No problem. My thing was I grew tired of not necessarily depending on that, but I just kind of grew out of needing that to cope. Because I was going to therapy at the time too. So I just said, if I have other ways to cope, that's completely fine. I don't need that. It's not me. Like, even if I didn't like indulge in those things a lot sooner, it's still not me, you know?
So it wasn't just like health reasons; it was also psychological reasons.
Yeah, it's just like that's not who I am. Yeah. You know, I don't need to have, you know, a vice to be myself or be social. You know, that's not the case for everybody, obviously.
Yeah, because people talk about like how alcohol supposedly helps them become more social.
Yeah, you know, that's not the case for everybody, but for me personally, it's just like, yo, this is not like aligned with my morals, my psyche, my whole being. So I just said one day, F it, you know. I heard about straight edge when I was getting into the scene, never thought about it.
Yeah.
Then years later, I'm like, all right, F it. I'm just gonna do it one day and go from there. And I reached out to a couple of people and they were telling me they were proud of me and everything and whatnot. Because I never really had a problem with it. I did get into like a couple of problems because of it.
Yeah.
But nothing super major. But yeah, I've been straight edge for about going on to 7 years at this point, because I still count the time where I was sober and wasn't doing anything before I claimed.
Okay. That's cool. No, yeah, I've been seeing some people in the scene do that. I know Jerry was one of them, where like he stopped doing weed.
Yeah, he became sober. He still drinks, but he's sober.
But when it comes to weed, yeah, and I think that's a good thing. Like just anything, even if it's just one small vice is gone, I think it's a good thing. It's a good step forward, and I enjoy when people start like improving their lives. Saying like, you know what, I'm tired of all this. How we're going to start improving our lives and just getting a handle of everything. I mean, to me, that's always great. It's always good when you see people change and take charge of their lives. It's very easy to slip into like being like self pity and like, oh, woe is me. But after a while, like not only does it hurt you, but like it hurts the people around you. Where you might become baggage to your own friends. Where like, you know what, we want to help you, but like you also got to help yourself.
Exactly, because you have to depend on yourself for everything in your life. Yeah, you can have people support you, but at the end of the day, you have to get yourself out of everything.
And so the fact that you're doing that, I mean, it's great to me. It's very inspirational. It's the fact that people are taking charge. Again, sometimes, again, there's for a while, like, again, I have certain views that I know the scene's not going to agree with, but I'm going to say it. But I was not really big on the whole 2010s when there was a huge encouragement of victimization. Like, again, like I know certain people are oppressed and there's like stuff like that, but like certain stuff, like you need to stop blaming the world for the issues you have in your life. Like after a while, like you mentioned, like you're in charge of yourself. There's only so much doctors can do. There's only so much your friends can do, your family. After a while, like I don't mean like the boomerism where like, oh, strap yourself by your bootstraps. No, I mean like completely like realize at the end of the day, all you have is yourself when it comes to taking care of yourself. That's it. Like you can have all this medical advice, you can have all this medication, but you just gotta take care of yourself. There's no other way around it. When it comes to your financial situation, you cannot be relying on other people. Where I had friends where I wish they would improve their lives, but like they would be constantly asking everybody for money.
Yeah.
And I get like once in a while, if you're going through a tough situation, I understand. But if you make it a habit, and then you're spending your money on vices and other stuff that you don't really need, and you're not improving your life or putting yourself in some kind of direction, I mean, you're putting yourself into hell on earth. And so I think sometimes it's good that that's no longer being encouraged anymore. Now it's more, okay, the world is shit, but like we're gonna do something about it, no matter whether it be through a community or through yourself.
For
So I'm
sure.
glad that's changing because I was not a fan of, again, even with bands, like there's certain bands where their whole shtick is like, oh, we suck, we're not that good. And they make that part of their like their image. And I'm like, and I hate it. Like when I would see bands do it, I'm just like, no. Like the whole point of a rock, like again, I came from like the 80s stuff, so I'm like, the whole point is being confident in yourself, you're a rock star. You cannot be acting like the average person. You know, people want to see you because they want to be entertained.
Yeah.
They don't want to, like, if they wanted to see like a person with no charisma, just doing whatever, they can just go to karaoke nights.
True.
When people are paying to see you, you have to be putting on a performance.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the way I see it. So I'm glad that things are changing now, culturally at least.
For sure. Yeah. What you're going on is like victimization, self-victimization,
Where
and self-deprecation.
Yeah,
also.
where that was, for a while, it was being encouraged, and I'm just kind of like, no, like this needs to end. But I'm glad that's no longer part of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of like indulging on that up to a certain point, and it's been a tough road to kind of just like see that change within myself to not do that anymore or as often, depending on what it is. But yeah, I'm glad the culture is changing too, because you know, this life's not easy.
Yeah.
For one, and people are always going to be going through something, and you know, the world's not the best place sometimes. But hey, like you said, you can't always rely on everybody else to help pick you up when you are down. You need to have that will to pick yourself up too, because mainly you can have, you know, a good support system, but if you don't lean into that, but also give yourself that grace to want to be like, hey, I need to better my life, even if it's small steps, you won't be able to get yourself out of that rut.
Yeah.
You won't be able to, you know, continue to see the more positive outlook when it comes to whatever you are experiencing. So I get you. It's not necessarily like a hot take or what you're bringing up.
Yeah, because I know, like, to see when it comes to like anything like that's like looks conservative in some kind of aspect. Because again, people think like the boomers like, oh, strap up yourself by your bootstraps.
It's not even conservative, honestly. It's like
I know it's not, but it gets coded. Like people say like, oh, that's conservative coded when it comes to kind of stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. That because what they're trying to embellish is more on the individualistic part.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're implying though.
No,
the thing is just like, oh, well, you have to like believe in yourself before you do anything.
Yeah.
It's mainly what you're like connotating.
No, yeah, and I mean I see that in different aspects. Again, I look into different cultures, and I mean I also see that in religion, where like in the Bible, it's just like you shouldn't be like pointing out the wood chip in your brother's eye or your neighbor's eye you should be like focusing on yourself instead of like pointing out the faults on everybody else. Focus on yourself. I mean, yeah, stuff like that. I mean, I see all these lessons everywhere. Because again, I think a lot. Same thing with when it comes to pain, where there's always this meme where it's like pain now versus pain later on, where it's just like a guy exercising, taking care of himself. Like there's going to be discomfort now, pain right now, but it's going to pay off in the long term compared to not taking care of yourself now. Then down the line, you're going to have so many medical issues and you're going to go through a different type of pain and discomforts. And so like all of these life lessons just exist and they apply everywhere, not just in certain situations. Another one is just I want to encourage the scene to get involved with is not just health but also financial stuff. Again, when it comes to the research I did, I know I think 40% or somewhere around there, 40% of whites and Asians they have retirement accounts. Yeah, they're taking care of everything. When it comes to African Americans, Hispanics, I think it's 10%. And so stuff like that, people need to take care of your health, your wealth, but also making sure you know what you're gonna do for your family and for yourself, because for the longest time people get told they never teach us about taxes in school. Yeah. There's so much stuff that they don't teach us in school that I wish we would get taught. How to deal with taxes, because again, if you're a promoter, you gotta learn that stuff. Once you become legit, fully legit, you gotta handle that stuff. Yeah. It's tough, but you have to. Before, I don't know, I forget what it's called. The one for the independent contractors. There's a certain tax form. I forgot what it's called right now. That or just dealing with retirement, because again, another thing I noticed with the Valley is that since we're not educated in financial stuff, you'll see elderly relying just on Social Security. Yeah, something my grandpa goes through, and it's just it's very tough seeing it where you're at the whims of the government, no matter who's in charge, what's going on. You never know what's gonna happen in the next month, and I hate that. And I wish we would get taught hey, there's ways to curtail that where you can start saving right now. You can start investing right now, whether it be in stocks or ETFs and all stuff. Stuff that's actually reliable, that's solid stuff. And you won't have to worry about that stuff down the future. For sure. Yeah, so all that stuff is just very important. I don't know. I know I'm going on rants right now, but it's just kind of
No, for sure. I feel you.
There's just so much stuff that I want to pass on to the youth, because sometimes I get scared. What if something happens to me? What did I do in my life?
Right.
Did I help anybody in my life? If I saved one life, I helped them in their life find the right direction. Because I do that to the youth, where sometimes people ask me for financial advice, and I have this sheet where it tells you everything, baby steps on how to improve your financial income, your financial situation. So one thing I encourage is having a 3-month to 6-month emergency fund. And now that we're seeing all of this stuff right now, the California fires, I'm not sure if you heard of this, but there is people corporations like BlackRock where they're seeing their opportunity to buy people's lands that are in terms of, yes. So the fires come in and you know what, if you don't want to, you're gonna lose your house, how about you sell your land to us and we'll take care of it. It's kind of all right, that's fucked, because
it's opportunistic. It's
opportunism. And when it comes to the individual, the average person, your most value is going to come from owning a house and the land. That's your biggest investment, followed by owning a car. You cannot be letting people take advantage of you when it comes to all that stuff. That's another issue. The issue where the youth, and again, this is very important, is that they're not owning houses no more. Part of it is because there's not enough houses. There's not enough starter homes. So a lot of people in the scene, I'm pretty sure, they go through the same thing where they're 25 and still living with their parents. It's not just here in the Valley, but it's everywhere in the U.S. where there's a population increase in terms of people staying with their parents much longer. And so stuff like that, it's very important to me, because I'm going through it. I know other people are going through it. And again, I know politics gets conflated with our scene where there's a lot of anger. Yeah. I know there's the whole again, there's the political side of punch and Nazi and stuff, but to me it's more always the economics of how can we make our community better. And so I would also encourage the youth to start learning quickly about what finances means and all that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely would encourage people to be more mindful of all the choices they're gonna make, and just learn a little bit more to just just improve their lives, because you can be angry up to a certain point with what's going on in the world and in your personal life, but you can only blame so much before you kind of have to realize that you need to start doing those preventative measures, like you said, to kind of just have a better quality of life down the road for yourself, and most importantly, the people that you care about.
People around,
whether it's your family or friends.
And the same thing applies to the scene again. Like if you want to become a promoter or any other aspect, like you gotta learn finances. Like you can start learning. Okay, I owe this. The show's gonna cost this amount of money. How many tickets do I have to sell? How many people are expected to come? How can I figure out the ticket price and all that stuff? I mean,
you also had to learn interpersonal skills because you had to be conscious of everybody else's time.
Yeah, that's the other one. Very important. What else do you want to talk about before like we wrap it up? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time either.
I got all day, man, but you're good. But if you want to start wrapping up pretty soon, let's see.
I don't want to take up too much.
No, you're good. So let's see. I guess we can just talk up to like now, like what's going on currently.
Now. So right now, I mean, for me on my end, I mean, I'm very excited because now I'm at the point where I want to expand a little bit to the hardcore scene, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes. To me, it's always about value. It's always, again, it's the economics. It's always the value. What can I offer that you guys aren't doing? So I'm hoping to get involved with you or any other promoter who wants to work with me. Again, I want to do partnerships. Again, back then, there wasn't like scenes, like separate scenes. There was actual mixed genre shows.
Yeah.
So, and I want to bring that a little bit back because, you mentioned the whole clique issue. That's kind of happening now with scenes where like now it's hardcore scene here, indie scene here. Part of it is the venue's fault. Certain venues harbor certain genres. I kind of don't like that. I'm not a fan that certain venues have taken over certain genres.
Yeah.
I'm very mad about that. But it's the situation. It's the fact that there's no DIY scene. There's only like maybe 2 venues right now. I wish there's more DIY venues.
Yeah.
I wish there was just a change in dynamics, just to not let certain venues become the arbiter of certain genres. Because I think that's what's happening right now. The only neutral ground, the way I see it, is the Gremlin.
Yeah.
Because the way, I mean, from an outsider perspective, the Wars is kind of seen like as the indie alternative rock venue. The Gremlin's like a middle ground between the hardcore and that scene.
Yeah.
707 hardcore scene, no doubt about it. I know you also have the VFW skate parks, but again, when it comes to like the established scenes, that's what this place is known for. And so like I wish the community would intermingle more now that it's gotten bigger.
For sure. Well, you are correct in certain aspects, but also there's like maybe a misconception too here and there, because yes, there were separate scenes a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more easier to do mixed spells now. But at the same time, you know, sometimes you can't always do mixed bills.
When it comes to like touring bands, I know that would be tough, but like when it comes to local shows, at the very least.
Well, yeah, you can see that a lot more now because some of these kids took it upon themselves to start booking, so they're able to do mixed bills with just homies bands and just figure it out from there.
Yeah.
And they either do it for free, they do free shows, or they do like at a house, you know. Venue doesn't necessarily dictate on how much a scene is going to grow, but it is an avenue as to how to continue to like advocate for a space to continue having that community still be present.
Yeah.
So, you know, scarcity in scenes is a problem, yes, but obviously there is like some venues we can still rely on. You know, we can always do a house show, but obviously who the hell is going to give up their house sometimes?
That's the thing. Like I wish there was a continuation of the DIY scene, because after a while, like after Bummer Shit and Sauce House went away, there hasn't been a big continuation. I mean, I know there's been a Shack, and I know someone in Mission's doing a Den, but like after that, I mean, there's just skate shows, but I mean, it's not the same thing as a house show.
Right.
There's not like a consistent place where like everybody knows this place, they're always doing shows, let's go there.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, because the closest thing we have right now is also the Inconvenient Truth. I know they do their October show at their house.
Correct.
That's great, but I wish there was more consistency, because when it comes to doing shows with promoters, there's the financial risk part about it.
Correct.
Once you have DIY, you get rid of the cost of a venue.
Yeah.
You can kind of lower down the price of hiring a sound person. So there's less risk, and you can be able to like book bands that are, I guess, smaller, or maybe they don't have a huge draw, and you can develop them into like a solid supporting band for promoters, because then promoters can't be always hiring the smaller bands. So once you can establish that band into like a bigger supporting band, then it becomes easier to do more touring bands and having local support.
Yeah.
It's solid.
For sure. So like if you want to do partnership with like the hardcore scene, my recommendation would be just, you know, just talking to people and kind of getting their perspective on things, and kind of just figuring out a middle ground as to like what can be worked out to see what is something that we're not doing. Because obviously we feel like we're doing fine right now, but obviously there is going to always to be room for improvement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you've already talked to me already a little bit. So I would just suggest reaching out to like my friends in band and RGV or growing to see what you can discuss with them to see if they're open to it.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Next, I mean, there's so many opportunities. There's so much growth. So I mean, before I think there was always the fear like, oh, like how much space is enough space? How much
Correct.
Is there enough for everybody? That's always like, I know people always say like, again, I kind of dislike this because publicly people say like, oh, we're not competing with each other, but
unfortunately, it is kind of the case.
Everybody is competing with each other.
Unfortunately,
it's always the case. Yeah, there's a show here at the 707 at the Gibran at the Wars. You guys are competing against each other no matter what. I mean, it's people only have so much money, so much time. You can try to go to both shows, but you're gonna miss somebody from your lineup. So I mean,
sure, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
tough. But again, if there's different value that's being added, I don't think that's a bad thing because then you're not taking up space from one person or another. It's just new value that's added, and that's what I want to head towards.
For sure, but also I will say with what you just said, line of communication is mad important for that.
Yeah,
because you don't want to, interloop, or what's the word I'm looking for? You don't want to. You want to kind of give people a chance to, if there's a big thing that's happening like that day, but you want to book something that day, I think a line of communication would be important to kind of just work out, a compromise to be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this for this, but you do it this on another time.
Yeah.
You gotta be conscientious of the other people too, because, although we are technically competing with each other because it is kind of like that in a business aspect standpoint, we're a community at the end of the day. We have to at least get along with each other enough to be able to have that line of communication to be like, hey, like you have a show. Do you have a show going on? Because I want to book this. Oh, no, we don't have anything. Go for it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's very important. And that's where I need to get more involved because, again, I don't talk with other promoters. Again, the only other indie promoter is Patrick. And at that point, it's not like, oh, Patrick, can you move your show? Because I'm doing my show.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, it can't happen. But like when it comes to like the hardcore thing, you guys are more on a even level where you're both able to get like so many original bands together, which again, it's great. There's a lot of opportunities. But again, there's a disbalance with the indie scene where it's just me and Patrick at this point. Someone used to do shows here too, but I think she left to a different state. So I mean,
oh really? Okay.
Yeah. So things gone like really diseven, which is us too.
Sure. I feel that.
Something like that, like you kind of like, oh, no one's gonna want to move the show. I mean, it was just two people.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
But when it comes to like just in general, like just when it comes to the mixed genre idea, I mean, I think that would be cool. What else? I mean, for me, it's just making a name for myself at this point because again, it's not an ego thing. It's just that people like brand recognition because that means it's someone you can trust. I mean, that's why brands exist. If you go to Starbucks, you go to any Starbucks because they have that consistency of product. Same thing when it comes to promoters. I mean, yes, you're yourself as a person, but you're also a brand. That's just the way it is. People like recognition. People don't want to be like, oh, well, I'm working with this promoter, and everybody's like, who's that? No one likes that. Yeah. It's the unfortunate part, but it's true. People like to know people because again, if you're a known brand, that also means you're heavily involved with your community. So it's a good sign, no matter what way you look at it. So for me, it's just expanding into the Southwest. That's California. It's basically California, Texas, but Nevada and all those other areas are added into. I hate when people overlook places. Again, I'm guilty of it sometimes.
Sure.
But I hate like the term like flyover states. I hate the term because it means New York, LA, that's all that matters. It's California, New York. That also happens to us. I mean, we get overlooked sometimes.
Oh, 100%. It doesn't help like from a geographical standpoint that we're like kind of
far.
We're very far and sometimes it is inconvenient to route tours.
Yeah.
But I always tell bands the best I can. It's worth it. Please come here.
Yeah, because I remember Izzy mentioning that on a social media post. I think it was on Instagram story where some band was being discouraged from coming down here to the 707, and then I think
that was actually it was Livid.
Yeah.
It was Livid.
They were mentioning like, oh, don't come here, and then they came here. So they still came down, and the show did great.
Yeah, and it was on a Monday. It was on a Monday. 130 people showed up.
Yeah,
and I was one of them.
And so I'm glad that people, these touring bands aren't listening to the crowds anymore, saying, okay, you know what? We'll take the risk. We'll go for it.
Exactly. If you don't like it, cool. You don't have to come back.
And so luckily that happened to me recently where I was booking Mind's Eye.
Mm-hmm.
Very risky because, again, this is the first time coming to the Valley. I think it's on a Thursday night, the show. And not even San Antonio booked them. And so for people who don't know, typically there's... Like if a band comes to San Antonio, they share a similar demographic to the Valley. So if they go there and they do well, they're likely to do well here in the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
They did not get booked to San Antonio. So I'm like, oh shit, like now I have a band that's never been to the Valley. San Antonio didn't pick him up because Paper Tiger, they take up almost anybody because they're able to afford that.
Yeah.
So when I was doing the show, I'm like, man, like, is it gonna work out or not? But I'm glad that the interaction or whatever to that post was very positive, like around 500 likes. So I'm hoping for a good show. I think it's gonna be a good show. The pre-sale has been doing well, but man, like stuff like that gets very scary. And this is the whole thing about risk taking. Like if you're a promoter, you're not only putting your reputation on the line, but you're putting your money on the line.
Correct.
No, be careful, but again, take risks because again, you never know when it's gonna pay off. And so in this case, I'm very lucky. I'm very happy to pay it off, and I don't know, like that's my current thing right now. It's just the inconvenient truth with Max Diaz and Canada Leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Mind's Eye with Cathedral Bells and Armadillo, and then I have Archer coming in March with Persimpium as the opener, and there is 2 special guests. Since this show it's probably gonna take a couple of days for it to be posted. It usually takes like a week or so.
For sure.
So my producer, we're very busy people. I guess I'll announce it right now, so it should still make sense when it's announced. But I'm having the California band. Hold up, let me get it real quick. I can't believe I forgot their name. Holy shit, I forgot their name. And I was so it was Makeout Reef. Sorry, I didn't have to look it up. It was Makeout Reef. I feel bad because they're gonna see this like, oh fuck.
It was like, okay, Joe Martin, maybe we don't want to play your show no more.
Yeah, they forgot our name. No, it's Makeout Reef, and I'm so excited because it's an intermediate sized band that I wasn't sure like would come to the Valley, but now that they're supporting Archer O's, like okay, they're coming. I'm fucking excited for that. The other band that's jumping in, it's gonna be a four band lineup. It's gonna be Orion 224. They're from Houston.
Okay.
Very solid band. Again, they prove that TikTok works. What amazes me about them is that again, our indie scene is not super strong, but they're from Houston, and for whatever reason, they're able to bring a huge crowd down here in the Valley. How that works, I have no idea. But again, it's part of it is the amazement of TikTok, where sometimes people just find bands on TikTok and they become fans and they go to shows. And so I'm very proud of that platform.
That's what happened with Lie.
Exactly. And so I hope the platform stays alive because it's so important for everybody, for small businesses, for the music scene. It's important for everybody because it is the only discovery platform when it comes to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
It's
community based. Yeah,
they're all fucked. So
they're fucked, and it's again the way you see it is it's community based.
Mm-hmm.
People will only see your content if they follow you.
Correct.
TikTok, you can just go to a random live, you start scrolling through there, and you never know what you're gonna find.
Yeah, the only drawback though with TikTok is like some of those bands gain too much clout and they feel like they don't have to like put in all the work to like market themselves after that. And I'm just like, bro.
There's that, or sometimes their content isn't on par. Like you don't have to have like cinematic quality stuff, but like don't be doing, hey, guess the drummer, guess the guitarist, don't be doing that stuff. I mean, find other ways of promoting your band that's in line with what your music is and your goals. Because again, when it comes to content and your marketing, there has to be a goal to it. The guess your drummer, guess your guitar stuff, it doesn't really promote your band. It's silly content, but it has no like end goal to it.
Yeah.
If we putting your music in somewhere, like there was these people who I thought were very smart. They do vlogging. They're a band, but they also like check out places like venues, bars, and they play their own music behind. So you're hearing their music, you're seeing their personalities, and you're interested not just in the band content, but also like checking out different places. I think that kind of combination is very smart.
Yeah.
So just being smart on how you're promoting yourself is very important. You don't want to come off as cringe. Because unfortunately, I have friends with a band where they post so much content online, which I understand algorithms love people who post a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But be very careful because you're going to end up developing a hate base where there's people who just love to, anytime you post something, they love to like comment on awful stuff towards the band.
Yeah, had that happen in the booking page a handful of times.
So you have to be very careful with that stuff. It's a balance. So there is good aspects to TikTok, but there's also bad ones. And
for sure.
Figuring it out's important.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I mean,
what about you? Like, what are you like? What's coming up for you this year?
So I don't got much planned, but I do have. So we were gonna have something in February with working together with one of my friends, but that didn't work out. So we're gonna push that for like somewhere in March. I can't really announce details yet until they have a date and they get back to me. But in May, I don't want to spill the beans either because I'm working on that one too. But I'm bringing a 3-band package from from one band from Canada, one from Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, and then another one from somewhere here in Texas.
Oh shit!
Don't want to say this. Don't want to say the city because it'll give it away.
No, yeah. Once it comes to Texas, you gotta be very careful with cities because it becomes very obvious very soon. No, yeah, that's badass.
But I would say it's so bad, but people would figure it out right away, and I was just nah.
Don't risk it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be that, and then I'm working on that. That's gonna be sometime in May, first week of May actually.
Okay.
And then I have something in June that I'm working towards too, that if it does materialize, it'll be really cool. But if it doesn't, I'm going to try again later on the year to figure it out.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
But other than that, I really have just a wide open calendar right now while I'm kind of just figuring things out here and there. I'm going to start putting out feelers soon for some bands that I have in mind to kind of bring, but nothing solid yet. Well, actually, I lied. And I already put out a feeler for one band that's supposed to be coming to Austin in March. So hopefully that works out. If it does, awesome. And I'll say the band. It's Odd Man Out. Okay. I want to try to see if they can make a McAllen Day work because they're playing Not So Fun Weekend in March.
Oh, okay.
For Austin with like a bunch of other bands. Demise, sorry. Big Boy, Trapped Under Ice, the headliner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool. I think what people should, another thing I need to add to the aspect of promoters, or for people who want to become promoters, you're eventually going to reach a point, and I hate it, but it's part of it, where you're going to get so many offers where you have to start rejecting offers. And there's certain bands that you want to work with, and sometimes their tours are in the same week. Or
it's just too much.
It's too much, and you have to choose one, and that's it. And that part sucks, because when you're starting off, you're so desperate for shows, because like, oh my God, I got a show, and whatever. But then once you reach that point where you start throwing offers at you, you no longer have to reach out. That's when it's like, oh, so like, it becomes tough.
For sure.
Tough in a fun way, because like now you have different options, but
for sure, because that was my issue when I first started booking, that I was booking way too many shows and kind of just shrinking myself a little too thin.
That too, yeah.
And I got advice from some of my friends, like telling me like, hey, maybe you should just cut down on the volume in shows. Like you've been taking a couple losses, like maybe reassess. And then moving forward here, we can talk about this now, I guess.
Yeah.
Since you asked me about this in the beginning. So initially myself, when I was booking, it was just me.
Yeah.
Before I even got attached a name to myself, it was just me, myself, like posting it on my personal page. It ended up becoming too much that I couldn't like separate like the promotion business to my personal life, so it got too hectic. So that's when I ended up making the booking page and creating Get a Grip and going from there. It was just me myself for a while. After making a couple mistakes and taking some losses, I reassessed, and this is when I ended up getting Scott from Inconvenient Truth, and then Lane from Mankind, and many other projects. Yeah. To start helping me out with like things that I couldn't normally do on my own, because I'm still the head of like managing, like getting the bands and making the shows happen, but they help me out with the biggest thing that I can ever do, graphic design.
Oh, okay.
And then just treating me ideas here and there if they have anything to say. So it's been awesome to have them on my team for like the past year or so. And then I recently got Bean and their partner Pairs to start helping me too. And yeah, it's about 5 of us doing it right now. There might be one more person I might add on soon, but that's still in the works to be discussed. But yeah, so far it's all 5 of us doing things together, and we kind of just, I learned with them.
For the people who don't know, it's me. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically, it's just all 5 of us just working together and kind of just learning with each other. And I'm learning from them too, like a little bit, and teaching them like what to do. If I'm not available to do a show, they can just manage it themselves. So it helps me out with like just relief.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, how do you like manage everything? But yeah, the fact that you have other people helping you out, it makes everything else like more manageable.
Yeah, just having a team makes it a whole lot easier, because I can just dictate like, oh, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, or what can you do for me, like to help. No,
that makes so much sense, because again, I think people want to do everything. That was my own issue before, where I want to be in control of every single aspect of everything, but it becomes impossible. And then I was gonna ask, like, how do you balance your life? How do you balance your work life, the promoter stuff? And then you want to add the band part. So I'm like, how in the world are you gonna do this?
Yeah, just divvying up my time. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. You know, it's not that big.
What strategies do you find useful when it comes to like divvying up your time?
So I actually started doing just recently, since last year was putting reminders on my phone for
Uh-huh.
like a morning routine. That's like my slow implementation to that. And then just having like a whiteboard I was gifted by somebody to kind of just draw things on there and kind of like put dates down
Yeah,
and just go from there.
that's fair. No, yeah, because again, that's very it's important too. I need to get into that stuff. Like I have whiteboards, but I never thought about like just like segmenting parts of my life and making sure I have a constant routine.
Yeah, like it's just like a lot of people told me they commended like my commitment to just do it on my own because I'm not a control freak per se, but I just like to manage everything myself because
Yeah.
I feel like it's either my way or what. I'm kind of slowly starting to learn to get myself out of that.
Yeah,
And now that I have a team, it's a lot easier just to kind of just like, okay, well, what do y'all think about this? Okay, consensus rules, boom, let's do that instead.
yeah.
Okay, what can y'all do to help responsibility wise? Like I can take suggestions. And we just go from there. Obviously, it's been, I think that was a duck.
Yeah, like because I know sometimes I have a goat here too, so I'm like, is it the cat
Or it
is
might be the
ghost?
goat. It might be the goat,
Yeah.
actually. But anyways, yeah. So that's just mainly what I just do. Like, just try to like make sure like we're all on the same page with everything before we even go through with something.
No, yeah, for me, it wasn't being a control freak, but it was trust issues because I mentioned the story like a long time ago on a podcast, but when I was in college, I was starting off my own small business,
Mm-hmm.
and it was gonna be me and a couple of like filmmakers in my UTRGB class. We were doing projects, and I was just getting to the point where like, hey, like we don't need this class anymore. Like we can start like doing our own stuff, going out there talking to businesses and making advertisements.
Yeah.
And so the other guys were like, yeah, let's do it. And so we gathered a group of some of the best people in that filmmaking group. We made our business. We started going out to local businesses, and we're making pretty decent money. Our professor highly encouraged us to like, hey, great, like you're doing that, you're getting experience on the job. In college, we can only teach you the theoreticals, but never like the actual practice of doing that stuff. It started getting to the point where there was is he here? I'm not sure he's a retailer, or he was just insurance. No, he was a retailer. He was offering us this. He was saying, like, you know what? Pay me 10% of all your work. Well, not actually all your work. He was going to get us jobs in the real estate business. He was going to charge us a 10% finder's fee. Very fair. And with that 10% fee, he was also going to allow us to use his offices. So like if we need to record something or use an office, he was going to let us use all his different amenities.
Resources.
Yeah. But we need to sign a contract with him.
Ugh.
And I was like, for me, it was like, fuck yeah, like it's 10%. Like 10% is not a lot of money compared to the fact that he was going to offer us, because he had connections with the entire RGV real estate business. Like he's a very well-known person. And they were kind of like, oh no, like we don't want to be exclusive. And he was like, you guys aren't being exclusive. Like we're only getting the 10% from whatever I give you guys.
Yeah.
I don't think they understood that fully. And so they turned down the offer. And I was so mad because I'm like, that could, like when you're in the creative business, it's gig to gig. This was offering us like a cushion for the entire year. And they were like, no, we don't want to do it. And so I'm kind of like you guys are bad at business. Like that's the way I felt.
Right.
And we started having other conflicts in terms of like actual creative differences. And one thing I didn't know about these guys is that they were actually all friends from high school. I was the only one that was not part of
that friend group.
That friend group from high school. And so they're kind of like, well, they made, I know they made their own group chat.
Yeah.
Because like my group chats are like getting less activity. I'm like, okay, these guys, they're kicking me out. Then they asked for the social media password. I'm like, okay, I know what they want. And so even though this was my baby, like the whole company, whatever, I mean, it's a small business, whatever. And one of the guys even said like, oh, like we know this is your baby, whatever, because he started this whole idea. We couldn't have done it without you. They kicked me out, and it was kind of like fuck.
Yeah,
and
that's
so, like,
gonna sting.
Yeah, so like that got me like very like. Have you ever seen like Spider-Man, the very first one with Tobey Maguire?
Yes.
When they kick out what's his name? I forgot his name. The one who plays the Green Goblin, the actual the character's name.
Norman
Osborn. Like whenever when the board wants to kick him out, it's kind of like
he's like, this is my project.
Yeah, like I started this. You know how much I sacrificed to get here.
It was like, well, that doesn't matter. You're not producing results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, like it wasn't the results thing, but still, like it was just that pain. I'm like, fuck. And so when I started like the promoting stuff, I'm like, you know what, like I'm gonna do this by myself. Like I don't want to start off with a group and then like what if this repeats? And so part of it is the trust issues, but now I got much better at it. Like now I work with different people. Again, I'm not going to go with graphic design. I let other people handle that aspect. And so even the whole thing about naming it after myself, like Joe Martin, it was to guarantee that the company would not continue without me being involved.
Sure.
But again, even though Osborne, like Oscorp, he still got kicked out. Part of it was just trust issues. And luckily I gotten over that. I mean, once you start hanging out with enough good people that are behind, they have your back, you regain that trust. And I mean, I'm in a better spot right now compared to back then. So I think that's why, like, if people ever ask, like, why is it so much Joe Martin? It's because I want to make sure that, hey, this is mine.
This is my brand.
This is my shit.
Yeah. I feel and hey, I commend that 100%.
Yeah. And so luckily, you know, and I got over the trust issues. Now I want to collaborate with more people. But like we had mentioned privately before, you have to be very careful with who you team up with because people already know who I team up with. And this is something I'm going to speak publicly on. Like,
sure. By all means.
One thing I dislike about the scene is this fake niceness where everybody was like, when we had the sold out show at the Gremlin, everybody who I met was being super nice to that person.
Yeah.
And there's even bands that I work with and they're like, oh yeah, man, he's a cool guy and everything. And again, this was out in public. And once they came to like the private area where, again, behind closed doors, people were like, no, like he's a bad person. Don't work with him. Again, I'm very thankful for Izzy for being one of the people.
Shout out
to Izzy for telling me like, hey, this person, because they told me like, hey, I'm not going to tell you who to work with, not who not to work with, but this person is bad news. Fair enough. I also figured it out myself afterwards because the whole band issue stuff, whatever would pay. And then it was another person who I was meeting with at that time. She was, again, without mentioning his name, I told her like what was going on. She immediately recognized it was him, and I'm like, fuck, like this is bad news.
Yeah.
And so now that like I gotten over the trust issues, it's okay. It's making sure you're working with the right people.
Sure.
Again, it doesn't mean like be an asshole towards others, but it just means figuring out who the right people are. So when you mentioned you went through that stuff, I'm like, okay, this is someone I could trust because they also gone through it. And
yeah, and I've definitely put my trust in the wrong people too.
Yeah.
Like for the small time I've been booking. So
yeah,
you live and you learn.
you live and you learn. Yeah, so don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's another thing I'll tell
100%.
people. Some people like they want to wait for the perfect moment for everything, and like no, just do it. You fail, you learn. There's more to gain in failing than there is in winning.
100%.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to promote or like plug in right now? You can go for it, like your social media and all that stuff. Go for it.
Sure. So if we're gonna wrap up here, might as well just plug into social media. If anybody's familiar with Get a Grip Booking, but they haven't followed the social media page, it's gonna be Gag Booking on Instagram. And that's the only platform I have for the booking page.
Yeah.
Not gonna plug my personal out there because I'd rather people just engage with the booking page than anything.
Is there anything else, any like final comments you want to make just to get it all out there right now?
Sure. So yeah, booking page, just follow that if y'all can. If y'all want to keep up with what's going to go on for like the beginning of the year up until the end, and like for any future events.
Yeah.
Final comments is just be kind, be sweet. It's very cliche, but just be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't
it's
try
tougher
to
than people think, but yeah, be yourself.
Don't impress anybody. Don't try to do things to impress anybody because at the end of the day, it's only going to make you look worse.
Yeah.
Just do things for yourself. Do it from a genuine standpoint, and you'll be okay. And hey, although this community may not be perfect, I am very grateful in the position I am, where I'm able to be still present in this moment and be able to at least teach somebody at least something positive every so often. And yeah. Don't be afraid to come up to people and talk to people, even if they're like a quote unquote scary monster, aka myself. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
you'll be fine. I don't bite. All my friends are great too in their own regard. So please feel free to come up to us and talk to us. We are here to help you. We are not here to tear you down. Unless you're here for malicious intentions, please get the fuck out of my scene. But other than that, come have fun. This is a great community. Anybody can be a part of it as long as they're here for the right reasons. And then a couple shout outs. Shout out to Band and RGV. Please follow them and support what they're doing. Great set of people doing great things for their scene. Bunch of OGs and a bunch of people I grew up with. Shout out to Grown Collective. Shout out to GMC one time. Also, shout out to Mankind, Inconvenient Truth, SK, Sleocrasa. Shout out to Blood Clot. Shout out to worst behavior, false front, list goes on.
Uh-huh.
Support all these people and all these bands that I'm listing, and everybody further. Support each other, be kind to each other. That's all it is. We're a community. We're here to stick together, not be against each other.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Hope you really learned something from this. Again, I'm very happy to be part of this. I'm proud to have you because, again, very rarely do get to speak to another promoter. So this is, to me, it was like a great experience being able to relate with somebody else like on that experience. So I'm happy. Thank you for being on this. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you so much.